to just immediately switch, but maybe it's like a 1 minute warning or something like that.
Yeah, we'll do a quick little warning. Yeah, that works.
All right.
On that note, we say welcome to Brown and Browner this morning. We got a lot of fun topics to discuss. It's been a very active world, as it never, ceases to stop. Obviously, never time to catch your breath.
So true. First off, let's talk about the Olympics. So there've been a lot of rejoicing in America because we have the most medals. Although we don't have the most gold, China seems to always one-up us at the beginning of each day. I think they still stand 1 or 2 ahead of us. But one of the things I did want to talk about was the floor exercise. And during the floor exercise yesterday, we saw that Simone Biles had an uncharacteristically mediocre performance. Not that she wasn't spectacular in the runs and the flips, it's just that in 2 occasions during her routine, she stepped out of bounds, which basically put her in the silver medal category as opposed to the gold. And congratulations to the Brazilian. She did a wonderful routine, and hats off to her. But my thoughts went to the bronze medal. And for those who watched, before Jordan even had a routine at the end, there was an issue with the 2 Romanians that had performed before her. The second Romanian, can I think of her name right off the top of my head? Starts with an S, I think. She did a pretty good routine, and she had no penalties, but was assessed a 0.1 penalty for when she went to the far corner of the floor and she swept her foot around the outer area, never touching it, and her heel was up, and therefore her other foot was never touching the out of bounds area either, but she was still assessed a 0.1 penalty. At the end of her routine, she ended up tied with the other Romanian, and she was deemed, I guess, 4th place because of her execution was lower than the previous Romanian's execution in relation to the routine. Now let's fast forward. So she was already ripped off, and no one contested that. Now let's fast forward to Jordan doing her routine. Jordan does her routine. She now gets her score, which was like, she needed 13.71. She ended up with 13.66. There was an issue, and you can see it on the screen when they posted her scores. It said her initial routine value was 5.8, the difficulty.
Yes.
And it should have been 5.9 due to like a certain turn and twist and split of legs and spin in the air that she did during the routine. So they contested that, and that's why Jordan won the bronze medal. However, if you look at everything and you go back to the scores, I felt sorry for the first Romanian who thought she won because she was, told that she won, and then they had the protest, and then they had it changed. But who should have really won the bronze medal was the second Romanian, because if she didn't have that point deducted, her score would have been 13.8, which was higher than the score that Jordan posted after they gave her the extra 0.1 increase due to the difficulty. Why wasn't anybody in the hands up in the air protesting that? And it looks like they aren't allowed to protest penalties, but they can protest the original starting evaluation only. That is a stupid rule. So judges can just say you did something and you can be deducted, and you can't protest that. That lady should have won the bronze, not Jordan. I mean, I'm all America, pro America, but she should have won that bronze medal. And I feel sorry for both of the Romanians. The first one, who was told she won and then she lost, and then the second one, whose coach didn't even stand up. It didn't even look like they protested at all. And you could see the concern on her face, even before Jordan's score, that she should have been higher than the other Romanian. That's messed up.
So I'm reading an article right now, it just got launched on Yahoo Sports, that says there is a financial value tied to putting in an inquiry for such the case. And now you hit the nail on the head on what can and can't be contested. Now here's what's interesting. It says in this case, Landy had 1 minute from trial score. Landy, being the coach of Jordan Chiles, had 1 minute from trial score being posted to make a verbal inquiry which must then be electronically confirmed within 4 minutes. Landy had to agree to a payment to the Federation of International Gymnastics in the amount of 300 Swiss francs, which is roughly $351, if the inquiry was denied. The rule was created to keep coaches from challenging every single decision. Sort of the way you can lose a timeout in the NFL or actually give your opponent a power play in the NHL. The price of the inquiry rises with each successive loss. So it's $585 for the second one and $1,100 for roughly the third one. USA Gymnastics lost 2 inquiries during the men's competition and had to pay a total value of $895. Here at the Paris Olympics, money is agreed to be sent electronically after denial. It's the, quote, just Venmo me ethos. In the past Olympics and many other smaller tournaments, the FIG requires a coach to lay out a cash immediately. No one trusts anyone in gymnastics, apparently. That routinely led to a unique visual of the coach, often angry at the moment, whipping out a wallet and throwing out cash at a judge. There's a competitive risk for the gymnast because the review could also lead to a lesser score as well. If the judges notice that there was overscoring occurred. So there's a risk reward to it, as we can tell from this little blurb. There's a financial value to it, and I get that. And of course, what you just said, only what can or can't be contested, relatively speaking, because it does open up inquiry. So maybe and this kind of falls on the Romanian coaches too. Now, I can't remember in what order, because I know obviously the Romanians went before Child, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, both of them did.
So they would have, I guess, under these terms, only have the right to contest within that time period, if you will.
1 minute after the posting of the score.
Yeah. So I'm thinking and 1 hour or whatever it said, right? Yeah. So or whatever. 1 minute or whatever.
Well, it's got to be it got to be less than 1 hour. So you can protest way after the competition's over.
I have a problem with. Well, no, they're saying they basically can't. So that's why I have a problem with it. I'm saying like, okay, you did your event. Let's say you're the Romanian. You did your event, and let's say you were scheduled up early in the competition. So you did yours. You placed. You're sitting there in the standings. Jordan Childs comes along, let's say next to last, third from last, whatever it is, does her routine, fine. She gets a longer window toward the end when they've determined the winners, if you will, right? Theoretically, because at that point, you know what the top 3 standing is, relatively speaking. And that's where the Romanian was in third and then and in fourth. And then Childs was in fifth. At that point, Childs still has her window of inquiry because of the timing rules, right?
Right.
Versus the Romanians, if they went earlier, which they did, probably lost that window. To me, that's unfair. I think that there should be a window that should be allotted to all competitors, let's say within whatever number of minutes after the competition has ended, right?
Mm-hmm.
To file an inquiry on any of their participation, particularly the ones that would have to place. So within the top 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that would be more fair in this situation. I have reason to believe that because of the timing rules and everything else, that's probably why the Romanians got screwed. And then there was probably the second or third element, which was the Romanian coach didn't probably file a protest.
And I question that. I question that part only because the Romanian coach had both of her players.
Yes.
He could have and they were
discussing
it. They were discussing it right after the second Romanian did her routine, the blonde, not the brunette.
Yep.
And she looked up and you could see that there was concern that something was wrong. But why didn't that coach put that up there? Because both of her players, and maybe there's favoritism of one versus the other, because she would have been protesting to get one a better score than the previous one that was there. So I have a question about that too. That was a little shady.
Yep. So no, I question that. And then did monetary come into play? I mean, I understand it's $300. I mean,
I was about to say, come on, man. You're at the Olympics. You get more $300, you're in trouble.
We think of it as nothing. I'm sorry, Romania is not the most wealthy country in the world, and they probably don't devote enough money to their Olympics program, more than likely, just like many other countries. Now, granted, Romania has a rich history. Romania has a very rich history, and we forget Nadia Comaneci is the king.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what they commit to the Olympic program.
I have my own beef against this new scoring format because it's hard for me to just sit there and describe it to my kids. And I put that into context of when we grew up, it was simply 1 through 10 was your rating, and judges came up with a number and held up a fucking placard. Now, I get, I get now that there's, there's obviously different values, different things, definitely degree of difficulty, all that stuff. Totally appreciate it. Totally get it. But I'm sorry, make the damn system so that the common little kid can understand how the hell they're supposed to do this thing. And I can't tell my kid, oh, well, the starting value here is a 15.8, but we'll deduct based on how she does or whatever. Simone Biles is going to set the standard, every time. That's because she does,
her
16 flips.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
She does 16 flips versus the other girl does 10 or whatever,
and the height of her flips and all of these other things.
Yeah.
But well, like with the part with the inquiry. So
yeah.
I get the idea that you should really do the inquiry right away. Although I hear what you're saying, do the competition afterwards. They could have the inquiry, and I've seen that in other events where that has happened. But I would say this: if I'm a competitor, Jordan was going last or next to last, and I don't know what score I have to beat. That is a disadvantage for me.
It is a disadvantage. Yeah,
because I'm shooting for a certain score. And now that score changed, which had I known ahead of time, let's say that they did give the Romanian the point back.
Strategy changes.
Yeah, I was going to say, now I might do a different routine because I know that my difficulty here with this routine will get me the max score of X, which isn't enough. Yeah. So now I might change my routine to make it more difficult so that I could be able to achieve that score.
Yeah. I put it akin to golf. If I'm approaching the 17th and I know the other guys have finished and they're sitting one up on me, I'm going to go more aggressive on my holes, right? I'm going to go for the green.
Right.
It's the same premise.
Right.
If a girl's sitting up in my standing and I want to take the bronze, I'm going to go up my game and maybe add another extra flip to my routine or something or whatever the hell it is.
Exactly.
So I understand that fully. And that's also part of every sport. I get it. It's part of every game and how it works. But in this case, because of gymnastics and because they've tried to make it more equal with the whole scoring premise, which I think was the intent of changing away from the 1 through 10 situation versus what they have today.
And I think that's sort of fair because if I'm doing a more difficult routine, I should be judged on that, not on a standard that's equal for everyone. It should be judged by the difficulty of my routine and the execution of that.
Yeah, because now you're almost telling competitors, hey, go figure out your own personal best routine, whatever it is. You don't get to see every other girl. You just go do what you can and make it perfect. And if you do it, great. But you know what? Your level of execution may not be as good as the next girl.
Exactly. So you'll never win, even if you did the perfect routine and did your personal best. You will not even come close to winning, which is unfair because everybody should have the ability to adjust whatever routine they're doing to achieve the maximum score needed for them to medal.
I mean, I'll give you the perfect example. In the men's gymnastics, the kid on the pommel horse that's getting all the cred right now. I forget his last name, but kind of comes off as Clark Kent, if you will. The glasses, United States. Yeah, that guy's gonna get a Wheaties box if Wheaties ever existed anymore.
Wheaties does still exist, doesn't it?
Nobody eats it.
Yeah, nobody eats it, but because that used to be the thing, right? It's like, ooh, Olympic medals on Wheaties box. I'm gonna go buy Wheaties.
Box. I ate Wheaties. Yeah,
your cereal sucks.
Yeah, exactly. It tastes like weak cardboard. Come on. But so this kid does an amazing pommel horse routine. I think it was 2 days ago during the weekend when they did the men's competition. I thought it was flawless, but then China comes back and says, "Hold my beer," puts together an even better routine.
That's funny you mentioned that, and you used China.
Yeah.
I grew up in an era where China and Russia dominated both the men's and women's gymnastics, and then you had the Nadias and such, but it was the Olga Korbits and it was this and that.
Yeah.
What happened to China? I mean, they still winning back. But what the heck happened?
So China, if you look at it, they kind of peaked at their Beijing Olympics. If you look at it, right, in the last few, they've kind of faltered down. Maybe to some degree, justfully so, because they just probably didn't put the resources in their programs or whatever. But maybe they are. I don't know. Like I feel like there's probably more of an intrinsic problem of people getting motivated to be in those things because, again, government controls a lot of their aspects. I'm not going to speak for what it is because I just don't know it well enough.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment, but I got my thoughts, but I'm not going to comment there.
Yeah, I'm thinking that there's probably some limitation on who can or can't participate, and that's probably part of the problem. No different than I believe, and I keep forgetting her name. 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. This is right when Serena was just leaving the game in tennis. Do you remember there was a girl from China that disappeared magically?
There was a really good tennis player at that time.
She was a top 10 tennis player, and I keep forgetting the name. I'm kind of bad with words right now. But
Yeah,
she was
you're
top
right.
of her
I
game.
can't.
She said something kind of anti-nationalistic toward the Chinese government, and then all of a sudden she got erased off the face of the earth. And now we haven't talked about her since. Nobody has.
And that's something that's a concern. And I wasn't going to comment towards it, but there's always been this sort of air of, and with Russia too, like if you did not go and represent our country the way we want you to represent our country, something's going to happen.
Yep.
And
I joke about it with tennis. I joke about it with tennis a lot. I mean, you had a lot of good Russian players come up over the number of years, over the last 20, 30 years. And now you don't even hear a peep out of their names. Like, whether it be in public light or Russian light, either one. Like, I don't hear the word Yevgeny Kafelnikov, even the guy was number one for about 2 or 3 years.
Yes, he was good. He was really good. And then poof, he disappeared.
Yeah. There was all sorts of guys that came through the system, and all right, now off the face of the earth. There's a couple Russian gals that came through off the face of the earth. Everything just disappears magically, as if to say, like, okay, you've had your time, you're done. We got to focus back on our leader.
Well, I think this actually is something that I think we should talk about, and I think it puts a light on this. And when we talk about Olympics, remember in the past, many athletes used the Olympics as a way to defect from their countries.
Yes, sir.
And you don't hear about that as much as you used to. I mean, in these very countries we're talking about, as well as Cuba and a few other places, you had people defecting. As soon as they were able to get to another place, they tried their hardest to stay there, but they didn't want to go back. I think that there's a little bit of, I'm surprised that I don't see more of this. I remember Nadia Comaneci, she was given a bad rep for trying to leave Romania. And I think that, some of this has been squashed. I don't see people doing this as much anymore. And it makes me wonder the why.
Yep.
Why aren't these athletes remember, the Olympics, while it's about competition, there's a political overtone to the Olympics, a serious one.
It's the one and only opportunity for some of these folks to try to escape any plight they may have.
Exactly. And actually, I think Armenia, they protested a Jewish athlete. Like they made their athlete, I don't know if it was wrestling or what, but they made their athlete default or forfeit their match because they were not going to fight against the Jew. That was their protest. And you used to hear a lot more of that. I'm surprised we just don't hear as much, and I wonder what's behind that mechanism.
I think there's a lot of factors going on behind the scenes that you just don't, you don't get to hear about enough. I think. Like, I'll give you yesterday. I don't know if you're watching the pole vaulting competition. This Swedish guy
awesome. The Swedish guy is the bomb. And he's not even Swedish. He's actually American, and
that's the funny part.
Yeah, he was allowed to compete as a Swedish because his mother was Swedish, and they gave him dual citizenship and paid for everything. Yada yada yada.
So I'll touch on two things. So if you look at it, there's a lot of the more successful Olympians that are coming from other countries. Funny enough, either are going to college here, have some ties to the United States, or train in the United States, which is okay. That kind of goes back to our premise, like land of opportunity, land of maybe not so much opportunity, kind of thing. So it's one spin on it, if you will. Now, second to that, just to the pole vaulter, I remember growing up, there was this guy, Sergey Bubka.
I loved him. He was great.
That guy was a flying awesome. From Russian, mind you.
I was going to say, he was Russian.
I didn't hear that name once yesterday. Not once.
Wow. You know what? That is so surprising because before this guy held the world record,
that's the gold standard.
Sergey. I mean, he was the man.
That's the only other name I can name in pole vaulting sports because the man was just that dominant, just like the Swedish guy.
That's a great point. And I honestly don't recall even hearing the word Russia or Russia much at all in this Olympics.
Do you think there's an underlying thing going on? Because obviously the Russian athletes are not able to compete under the Russian flag right now, and they have to go independent. Do you think there's an underlying tone from the media right now that's suppressing any news, accolades, anything of that sort from Russian athletes right now that's also killing the whole vibe?
You know, I think you bring up a good point, and I think that there's some relevance to that. That they really are intentionally, they are intentionally making sure that they do not provide any kind of support from a Russian slant.
And I feel like more of that may come out even in a couple of years when the Winter Games comes out, because obviously in the Winter Games, the Russians are dominant athletes. We know that. Like, you know, a lot of the sports, they have set the world records in lots of sports. And, you know, if that games comes around and we don't even get to hear a peep out of it because the Russians aren't competing or can't compete or whatever the heck it is, that's going to be kind of telling of, you know, some kind of suppression or something going on behind the scenes that's quieting down what the real aspect of the sport is, or in any sport at the end of the day.
And how do you feel about that? Because
believe it. I mean,
sport,
it takes the purity of a.
You can't hide the history, regardless of who did it and what. You don't have to play it up. We still say, hey, you know, OJ did break this record. OJ did run for this. We're not saying OJ's great, but we're not now just erasing history because we don't like the person.
See, not to take it more widespread, but that seems to be our vibe right now in society, right? Like, let's just erase all the bad stuff. You can't erase it because it was that prevalent or bad or good. It existed. It's the reason we are who we are today because of it. I mean, the Russian guy, the Swedish guy is as good as he did because he probably saw Sergei Bubka being as good as he did.
And grew up with that, and they actually showed him. And if you think about it, I mean, he's young, he's really young, but he was 5 years old in the backyard. It was so cute watching him do the little pole vault. All that was great. But who was he aspiring to be? Now, granted, his aspiration may have been his mother because his mother was a former pole vaulter. But who was she looking at that time, trying to emulate, maybe utilizing certain aspects of their way of doing things and technical, approach to it and applying that for her? So you got to go back to, you got to give him credit. Sergey was the man, period. I don't care about what his country did. I don't care about the politics behind it. Again, politics and Olympics. But boy, to just erase that. And I just to add something, I think all countries should not try to hide their past, but learn from it. That's the whole key to it. It may have been bad. Yes, that's how we were hundreds of years ago. But here's what we've done based on that experience to make ourselves better. But instead, it's like, well, let's push that under that big old rug with the hump underneath it. This is America, right? We're going to keep pushing that stuff up under the rug. And I don't know, sooner or later, it'll just go away. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the problem that we have in society because people don't really take a look at what historically has been done that may have created barriers, ceilings, and such for people to, you know, grow in a way that other people may have grown. But then we look at each other as equals. But if you're starting here and I'm starting there, that race isn't so equal, is it?
Yep, it's a very good point. Not to bring it full circle and kind of put a loop on this topic, but no, like we started with Jordan Childs, challenge system, politics now. I mean, there's some underlying tones in the Olympics, I think, that exist that people aren't talking about, unfortunately, to kind of sum up where we're at. And it's unfortunate because it is taking away from the purity of the game, regardless of what sport it is. It's taking away from the history of what the Olympics actually mean, because this was essentially a break from war, which we'll kind of delve into that whole world in a second here.
Right.
But, you know, that hasn't taken place either. So we're taking away from the purity of things for what they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be a true competition, people battling with their physical abilities, their mental abilities, for the purity and the right of, you know, trying to figure out who's best at what, basically.
Yeah, it's a shame because competition is something that brings the world together, and we cheer and cry for these competitors because we feel their desire and want, and know they put so much effort and time into it that we really are glued to the competition and want these people to win. And to that point, St. Lucia and some of these other places that have never won a medal. There was I want to say there was an Armenian lady who won a gold medal in something. Hats off to you. And I love that because I'm all about the underdog anyway. But I love that story. And I love the fact that it isn't just US, China, Russia, Sweden, Denmark, whatever it is. I'm in France. I'm happy to see other countries, small island countries,
Yes.
succeed.
I'm going to be more remembering these Olympics for the individual efforts of a few rather than, oh, okay, America dominated, yada, yada, yada. The big names shined, all that stuff. Like, I want to remember the Turkish shooter. That guy is a hero to all.
So what happened here? I didn't follow that one.
So I'm sure I don't know if you come across the meme. So there's this guy from Turkey. He was in the shooting competition. He ended up taking the silver medal. This guy, no gear, no nothing.
Oh, I saw it. Yeah, that's great. Old school Dirty Harry.
This was like the guy that represents my generation. I'm telling you. And everything that we talk about, like, hey, we were the latchkey kids. This guy was a latchkey kid. I can tell you he was.
Yep, that's how I learned to shoot.
He
I love that.
all the gear, the blinders, the whole nine. He just walked up and said, "You know what? All right, let's do this." Hand in pocket, just goes 2 gats. Boom.
Yeah, and the meme is so funny because it shows like the today's generation. He's got like 18 things on. He's going sideways. It's like, really? The guy still does it old school and does it better.
That guy was Gen Z, Gen X, like everything from the 70s and 80s packed into one. He is the man.
I love it. I love it.
All
right. So
to play as GoldenEye.
Oh man, I used to love that video game, the James Bond video game. Oh my God, we used to play that for hours. My son was so good, I had to stay up late night.
Oh yeah, yeah. You might memorize where the spots were.
Okay, well, again, I think the Olympics. There's the rest of this week, and is that it for the Olympics?
Rest of this week, I think closing ceremonies are sometime this weekend. I want to say sometime, coming up. But yeah, they've got I know U.S. basketball plays this afternoon, and I think in the semifinals against Brazil. Yeah, something like that. Serbia and Australia, or sorry, they may be playing the quarterfinals. Let me take that back. They're playing.
I think that's the quarterfinals, but I think the U.S. volleyball team, the men's volleyball team, is in the semis playing today.
Yep.
I know the track and field events are starting to heat up. Yep. We got the 100. We got 100 already played. Today. And I'm sorry, Noah did what he was supposed to do, but the lady did not. I'm sorry, they pumped her up. So she wasn't even close. The St. Lucia woman beat her by like 2-3 seconds. It was not even close.
That was. I hate to say it, but that was purely awesome to watch because there was that girl came from small island, probably little to no to support is my assumption.
Right.
And she just smoked the track. She took all that corporate stuff, all that media hype, all that stuff, and just said, "You know what? I'm going to win this thing."
I'm not sure if it was the same story, but they talked about. I want to say it was this girl. Her brothers walked her 2 hours to school, so that or to this place, this training place, so she could do her training.
That was the Brazilian the gymnast.
That was Brazilian gymnast. Okay, yeah. I thought that was an amazing story. I mixed the stories up.
Yeah,
that was such an amazing story.
Yeah, she grew up in a Brazilian favela, so underprivileged area. Her 4 brothers took her to practice every single day. Pretty badass story.
That is badass. I love it. Yep. That's what family's for. That's what friends are for. That's what community is supposed to do, which is something we've sort of lost in the American society. It's about lifting people up and doing what's necessary to give them an opportunity to be the best, whatever they want to be. But now we're so busy, putting each other down that doesn't even happen anymore. In community, we don't have much of a community. The neighbor next door hates me, and I shouldn't say that. I have decent neighbors. I have decent neighbors, but it's not like it used to be. Like we used to take care of each other's children. We used to do things together. It just seems like we're all sort of siloed, living in the same area, but there's no neighborly community commitment.
I think that's changed in a lot of places. Even in my own neighborhood, like we had to get together over the weekend. My neighbor just moved in. She had a housewarming and kind of like a graduation party for her daughters and stuff like that. So all of us were invited over, and it was a good time to get together. But we honestly don't get together enough. I mean, we all kind of share similar interests and everything else, but everybody's living in their own world these days.
And we're right next to each other. Like you said, I haven't been to a housewarming party for anyone. I rarely see anything, and I don't even invite people over. I used to be, hey, come on by, come on back. We're in the back of our house barbecuing. Come on over. We just don't have that. The only ones that I've actually visited were the French family that moved in a couple of doors down, and we had a chance to go over. But we need to have more of that. That's what brings us together, people. We're too
Yes.
busy trying to be separate and supposed to be a united front. We call ourselves United States. Boy, we aren't even united
We
neighborhoods.
ain't not united. We're just states.
Yeah. All right. Well, that gives us a good segue to, well, not a good segue, but I'd like to talk
Yeah.
about some football. Before we go into other things, let's keep it on sports. Let's talk about football. There are some things going on in the NFL today that are leading, and I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody else says, from September to February or to January
Yes, sir.
are the best months of sport or being a spectator of sport that you ever have, because you have football. I mean, you also have hockey and basketball as well, but football
And baseball.
dominates. What's that?
You get 4 sports. You get baseball. You get the World Series all there in that
That's
time
right.
too.
You have the World Series, which after 162 games, all I want to see
Yeah,
is the
exactly. No doc.
162.
Yeah, no doc on baseball, but that season's just way too damn long. Honestly, I don't pay attention until August and September when the races get narrow and you're gonna kind of see like who's the best of the best, and you start paying attention what playoff baseball is going to look like. And playoff
Exactly.
baseball is obviously a lot of fun. you know.
Yeah, exactly though. But NFL, everybody's watching it. We've got training camp opening. You got moves being made. What's going on in the NFL today?
Well, I'll kick it off with the biggest headline of the day. Apparently, Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers are willing to shop him around. There seem to be 2 suitors in place, apparently, with the Browns and the Patriots.
And potentially Washington too. Washington, I heard something about.
So Washington put an offer on the table. Apparently, the 49ers didn't think it was enough. And I don't think it sounds like the Washington, well, I keep calling them the Redskins, unfortunately. And you can call me racist, but I'm sorry. I will stick to historical context.
Yeah.
You know, people, even loyalists here will still refer to them as the Skins because they've got the jerseys and everything else around here. But the Commanders, to be more appropriate, the Commanders put forth an offer. Apparently wasn't enough for the 49ers, so they may be out of the running at this point. That said, they're working out a 3-way deal potentially between the Browns and the Patriots. Here's the twist. It may involve Amari Cooper.
Wow. And honestly, I know he performed okay, I guess, for the Browns. I always thought he was way overrated. I always thought that. Even when he was with Dallas, I just always thought he was overrated. And I had him on my fantasy team, and I hated it.
See, I think he's a good receiver. I don't think he's ever been in the best situation. I think coming out of college, yeah, the dude could just flat out catch. There was no question. I think between the time that he was with the Raiders and then moved around and everything else, like he's had his opportunities, but he hasn't made the most of them. That said, I don't know if that's just a personal thing, ego thing, whatever it is with him, but I think the dude's got physical ability. Now, that said, he's not a game breaker to me. He's the guy that will be the greatest possession receiver, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to be sit there like doing Z-slant crazy stuff and breaking open a game because he gets a hold of the ball. He's not that Tyreek Hill kind of guy.
He's Tom Waddle. Send him over the middle. He'll catch a 10-yard pass. Yay. You won't do much after that. And he's only going to catch about 75% of those passes because I don't think he's that great. I just never did. But I would love to see Ayuk be teamed with Josh Daniels or Jaden Daniels in Washington. I think that would be very interesting to see.
And I think this is correct. They used to be actually together at ASU for a year.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yep.
I would love
before the transfer portal and all that.
Yeah, and all that stuff where he ended up at LSU. Yada yada.
I would love to see that. Buddies. Yep. And I think that would be a great kickoff for the Commanders to rebuild their culture.
And that was what I was about to say. Honestly, I think that would help. I'm sorry, Washington used to be like one of the perennial Super Bowl teams, and then they fell off the face of the earth for like 2 decades. What happened to them?
Living here in the DMV, there's two types of fans. The majority of the entire state of Maryland and Virginia and everything else in between, they're Commanders or Redskins loyalists, if you will, because they've been here for decades. They were an established profile, just like you said. They were contenders for many years. Heck, when RG3 came in, it was the second coming of Jesus for a year.
And they were still good then, and they were good, and then all of a sudden it just fell apart. Maybe it was 2 years, but
then I think the organization caught up to it, obviously, right? Because it was dumb move after dumb move, overpayment after overpayment.
Dan Snyder. Hello, Dan Snyder. You suck like the McCaskies suck.
So I've been to the stadium twice. The place leaks, literally. it leaks shit. I'm not gonna kid you. Like, it is that bad of a place. Dan Snyder arguably might be one of the worst owners in sports. He probably doesn't get enough of the bad hype that other people do in bad situations, like the Donald Sterlings and the Mark Shots and everything else we've mentioned, historically. This man literally took a franchise that is worth, somewhere in the top 5, top 10, I believe, of all sports, and has sucked the shit out of it. Like,
the life out of it, sucked the life out of the fans. Like you said, hasn't put money into the stadium.
Yeah.
It's a place where people don't necessarily want to go.
And this is the nation's capital. Now, the funny thing is, the running joke in this part of the state, where I'm obviously living a little bit closer to Baltimore, so there is a bias toward the Ravens. But the Ravens were kind of the running joke for a while, even though they've won more, obviously, in the last 10, 15 years, by far. They were kind of the running joke, like, oh, they're just a bunch of fair weather fans. And frankly, I still kind of consider them to be to some degree. Like, if there's a bad season, they all write off the Ravens pretty quick around here. but that's the thing. The Ravens have bad seasons.
Yeah, well, Lamar's come. When have they had bad seasons? And remember, even when Joe Flacco was there, Joe Flacco got them to the playoffs and won a game or two. So
to me, and I'll put an indictment on DMV fans in general, I think the Ravens are what the Redskins used to be. You've got a coach that's been there forever. You've got a leadership program that's been there forever. You got an ownership group that's been there forever. You've got an established quarterback. You've got a winning culture. You've got a defense that's perennially good. Doesn't matter who the hell's playing. I'm sorry, but that's called winning football, and that's called a culture that people want to be in. Why do you think Derrick Henry went there?
That's right. And they run the ball, and they commit to running the ball, and that's what the old Hogs used to do.
You know what you're signing up for.
Yeah, when they had John Riggins, you knew they were going to run the ball, and he was John Riggins. I'm sorry, John Riggins wasn't weaving out or juking out anybody, but he would run your ass over.
My favorite Raven, I mean, obviously there's a bunch of them, that have obviously got the hype around here, like Ray Lewis and everybody else, was Jamal Lewis. That dude was a bad
monster.
He was a bad man.
He was a bad man. Yes, he was.
And they've had a litany of running backs that have come through. I mean, you got even, I'll even put in Ray Rice in that category. The man was a bowling ball. He was good.
Yeah, and he was a wrecking ball if you was his wife.
Yeah. Well, that's
his wife. You were probably like, yeah, he was a bowling ball because he was wrecking me because he was a abuser. And he never recovered from that either.
No, and sadly, the dude's gotten erased off the face of the earth, unfortunately. But no, like the Ravens culture is something that will be undeniably kept forever, in my opinion. Like, it'll be smash mouth winning football is the brand of Baltimore. It's a working class team representing a working class city, and it's just cool to watch that dynamic grow and grow and grow year after year. Now,
agreed.
Like you just said, the Commanders need a reboot down the road. They represent the nation's capital, for God's sakes. They have access to 2, if not 3, of the easiest stadiums to go to in the DMV. I mean, I sit almost equidistant right now to where the Commanders play and where the Ravens play. Which do I prefer going to? M&T Bank.
Yeah. But that's
by
sad.
far.
But that's sad. And again, that goes back to what you said. The ownership, you got Newsom, you got Harbaugh, you got a brain trust that really cares about winning.
That combination of Newsom and Harbaugh, I don't think gets enough credit ever.
I agree.
Yep.
It's a standard. It's one of those where you can trust that organization because you know they're going to do right by the fans.
By the fans. Yep. And that's the cool part here. I think they truly embrace the culture of Baltimore, where it's working class, people that are kind of nose to the grind, Iron Belt, Rust Belt, AFC North, you got Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore, that whole vibe. They've bought into it. And it's same thing in Pittsburgh too. No knock. I mean,
I was just about to say that.
Organizations, by far.
About to say that.
I mean, you're talking about 2 of the classiest organizations in sports by far.
And no question. History of this sport.
Yes.
And I put the Steelers in a classier place. I've been a Steelers fan. I was a Steelers fan when I grew up. I was a Chiefs fan, but in the 70s, you couldn't help but like the Steel Curtain. You couldn't help but what they set up in Pittsburgh, what the family set up, and then how they've only had, 3 coaches in the last 40 years or something? And they're all winning.
Yep.
Tomlin hasn't had a losing season in his entire career. Bring his ass over to the Bears. He'll learn how to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's just
Yeah,
culture.
exactly.
But you just said it. Even Cincinnati used to be the lowest of the low
Oh, yeah.
back, after who was it? Ken, I can't think of his last name, when they went to the Super Bowl twice and lost to the San Francisco 49ers. After that, they hit the bottom real quick. But look at where they are now. Look at what they've done, with their organization, with their draft picks, and established that winning culture.
I mean, not to harp it back, but I mean, going back to the whole Ayuk situation, potentially going to the Browns, let's say. So the Browns and Cincinnati Bengals are learning from their division. They're learning from the Steelers.
Yes.
They're learning from Baltimore on how to build those cultures in those two cities too. Because I feel like the Browns, they could kind of get there. They're willing to spend the money, as we can tell, obviously stupidly sometimes with Mr. Watson, but
very stupidly there.
But they're willing to spend the money to get the right resources because they've got some hellified talent on that team, both sides of the ball. It's unreal.
And always defense. They've always been great at defense. Generally, they've been great at defense.
Yeah, and I think they've got Stefanski's a great coach. I think they've got a good setup going there. They just need to get over the hump in the fact that they're now playing in the toughest division in football at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that makes it tough. I think you point that all divisions, I would hope, are doing, because the first thing that you should be building your team around is to win your division. Because if you win your division, you have an opportunity to do much more. So if you're going to win your division, and then who's the best team in your division? What do they do well? And how do we emulate that or take some ideas from that and be able to incorporate it in what we're trying to do? That should be everybody's goal. And that's when you start to see those bottom feeders start to come up and do things, except for the Bears.
I mean, think about it. You got Lamar and Derrick Henry coming out of a backfield this year against Myles Garrett in the Browns, and then you got the Watt boy, as I call him.
who still is crazy and not in the level of his brother, but the dude is a wrecker. He's a game wrecker.
Game wreckers. And you're talking about game wrecker. Now, I can't say the same about Cincinnati for their defense. I can't name their defense.
Their defense is this, but Cincinnati has the right formula, the old AFC formula. We may not play the best defense, but boy, we can score some points.
But see and that's what kind of questioned me on their moves too. And again, I think Cap took a toll on them because they lost Mixon, right? In the offseason.
Yeah, he hurt. So, I think he was underrated. I think people didn't give him his.
I think he was underrated too. I think it's going to be very interesting to see the team that I think is going to have a really real breakout is the Texans. Now that's turning into a class organization. Let me tell you.
It's not a breakout anymore, though, is it? I mean, they took a rookie and they did it. So talk about a 1 year, 2 year turnaround. And again, not to just say the AFC North isn't what it is, but boy. Once they got rid of Deshaun Watson,
smartest moves ever.
And I know some Texans fans, and they were so down in the dumps with Deshaun there. Sure. They get rid of Deshaun Watson, make a great draft pick. And here's the part. Carolina, you guys should be kicking yourselves in the butt because you had the number 1 draft pick and you picked the wrong person.
Yep. Totally agree.
And there were many people saying that Stroud was the better of the two, but you're so used to Alabama. Take that guy, right?
See, there's certain people that I feel have come out of college, and you can tell they're born winners. And I had that, and I'll be guilty of this. I thought Deshaun Watson was that guy until I got to see what kind of stupidity he does off the field. I thought he was that born winner kid that just knew how to ball coming out of college. I mean, he was the guy that beat Alabama. Let's face facts.
Yeah. Yeah,
he goes down the Bamas of the world.
Yeah, but guess what? Remember Vince Young? He looked like a winner too.
VY was a young. So here's the thing. Here's my difference between the two, and this is the reason I kind of see them as two different things. VY was good for 1 year, and he took out USC. Don't get me wrong. In that All-Star game, one of the greatest games I've ever watched in my life on TV, because it was one of the first games broadcast in HD, believe it or not, back in the day. And it was just badass to watch him take down Leinart and Bush and those boys. Like, it was just fun to watch. He was a 1 year guy. Deshaun Watson was a 3-4 year guy.
Yeah, that's true.
He sustained that level of excellence for Clemson all the way through. And that's the reason that, I thought he was going to be a good winner. But then, of course, first year NFL apparently gets too many masseuse parlor things going on.
Well, and that's the problem with some of these athletes. And that's actually the separator from, we've talked about this, what's great and what is just average, mediocre, or less. you can be a great, and all of these guys are talented. You don't get to the
Yeah.
pros not being talented, but it's how you handle all of the extraneous stuff, and including your friends.
Yes.
In that sort of, do you have the focus to be great, or are you just happy you're starting to make some money and now you're just gonna, be absorbed by the culture of nightlife partying and drugs and all of the women and da da da. So that's why you see, and Tom Brady, I'm sure could have cheated on his wife 1,000 times.
Sometimes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But he had that laser focus. He was about the sport. And if you really love something, you're going to put 100% of you into that. And all the other stuff sort of fades away.
You can tell that. You can tell a little bit of that by the inner circle some of these stars keep. Not just the inner circle, but even the outer circle when they're meeting up and stuff. Like yesterday, apparently in the Olympics, they had a party for the NBA, or I shouldn't call them the NBA, but the U.S. Olympic men's basketball team. Let's call it that. So they had a little get together yesterday. Tom Brady was there. All the greats of every sport were there. You had the Megan Rapinos. You had all the WNBA stars.
That was so great.
It was just a cool event. Now, you don't see guys like, Deshaun Watson, or you don't see any of those other sidebar characters out there, because some of those guys are doing other stuff which frankly isn't in that circle of elite, if you will. There's a circle of elite that I think kind of creates itself over time, unfortunately, where game recognized game. I think that's the phrase, right?
I love it, man. That's totally old school. Game recognized game. Hey, remind me, I had this video of this lady, I bet she uses that term. So she's 70 years old, beautiful woman. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but that's the point. So I mean, I think you see that separation. Like you see the Mahomes, the Kelseys, all that stuff kind of hangs together in different nexuses of the world, because they recognize the respect for the game. They recognize the respect for what they do outside the game, right? At the end of the day, that kind of thing. It's mutual, general respect. So I think there's different circles in that walks of life for sure. You got the guy.
You have a good point. It's like when you go to a Lakers game, right? All the stars come out.
Yes, sir.
And granted, the stars are there to be seen, but they're also there because they recognize greatness and they want to be part of that show. And I think you said something really poignant when you talk about all the people who were there at the Olympic things. They're there to appreciate greatness in another sport that they're not in. And they're supporting that greatness and probably in awe of that greatness. They even showed Tom Brady on the side. He goes, wow, you could see him. Like he's appreciating someone else being great in the sport or activity that they're doing. And I think that means something. When you start your ascension to greatness, being around others that are great. And if you notice, when Tiger Woods came out, he was trying to contact Michael Jordan. What does it take to be great? How do I become stoic like you to where I can cheat on my wife and have 16 ugly ass women and be so laser focused in my sport that it doesn't mess me up? You know what I'm saying? But that's what you do. Greatness seeks out greatness. And idiots seek out idiots. Yeah.
That's the sad truth. And I think that's where you get the separation over like the 3, 4, 5 year stretch of these NFL players, coming out. Yeah, some of them are ridiculously great. See, so far, to me, a class act has been CJ Stroud. I don't know if maybe he's been kind of media built that way, but that man has been a class act both in the media, outside the field, inside the field. That man he's got the right head on his shoulders, let me tell you.
Yeah, he does. And honestly, I might have done the same thing to Carolina Panthers. I said, you messed up, Carolina. I might have done the same thing, and I'll tell you why I would have done the same thing. What has been the track record for Ohio State quarterbacks when it came to making that leap from college to pros?
Ohio State player.
Take out, here's how far back I'm going to go. Take out Art Schlichter.
Yes, that's far.
And how many do you have? Who else do you have? Yeah. And he's what, from the 70s? Mm-hmm. I can't think. Give me 2 good Ohio State quarterbacks that have hit the pros. And
quarterbacks. I mean, think about every Ohio State player that's come out in any capacity, whether it be basketball or football. I'll push it to the next button. Oops. Now, the only guy.
Hey, OSU fans, don't call us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Michigan or an Ohio State fan. I'm not a Michigan or an Ohio State fan by any means. I hate that rivalry, even though I do respect the hell out of it. It's pretty cool to watch. But at the end of the day,
in that boat. I respect it, but I don't like either team.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I can't name a single stud player from each of those squads, whether it be football or basketball, other than Mike Conley, because he had the genes for it.
Mike Conley, he's still balling.
His dad was Olympian. He's still balling. I mean, that guy is pure respect to him. Now, the Greg Odens of the world, the James Laurinaitis of the world. I can name off names that have gone through hype scandals that have been amazing coming out of college and utterly failed at their pro craft.
Totally agree. Except there's one huge exception.
Yes.
And I'll even go two now. And they're both from the same university.
Yep.
Jim Harbaugh.
Yes, sir.
Was a quarterback there.
Yep.
And he coached there. And he's in the pros. And I got to give him his props, even if you don't like him. And when he was with the 49ers, he was doing the do with the 49ers. All right.
No, he's solid.
And the second one, you know who the second one is.
Des Howard.
No. Oh, Des Howard was a good one. He was decent. Yes. I'm with you. But it's the GOAT, Tom Brady. People forget Tom Brady.
I don't forget the GOAT. I'm just saying, I'm sorry, but when I think about Tom Brady, and granted, he went to school at Michigan the same time I was in college at somewhere else. And I just can't think, like, during that time, during like 99, 2000, all that time, like, it was basically post Peyton Manning, if you will. You know, because Peyton Manning was 97, 98 coming out of Tennessee.
Yeah, in Tennessee, he was killing it. Brady didn't do shit in college, not that I remember.
Yeah, I honestly can't name off too many great elite quarterbacks from that time because the bowl championships, stuff like that. I remember in 2003 watching Ken Dorsey and Frank Gore.
At the U.
And have the biggest upset because Ohio State beat him because Frank Gore tore his fucking ACL in that game. And it was the biggest crime in the world to me.
And he still had a better career in the pros than many of those Ohio State players.
Yes, sir.
And actually, there was a quarterback that I remember from that time as well, Jeff George. Jeff George went to Illinois, which is not a football school if you're trying to be a pro. All right. And he did some amazing things there. And actually, even when he transitioned, didn't he win the Rose Bowl when he was there? And then he transitioned to the pros and he was at Indianapolis and he wasn't bad. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad.
Yep. No, like I said, it's hard for me to name off people that have come through that Ohio State, Michigan circuit, gone on in the pros and become that super elite, other than, of course, the GOAT. And frankly, Desmond Howard, in my opinion. I thought Desmond Howard was
He was
the predecessor. He was the original Heisman step. To me, he was the guy that probably inspired Devin Hester, probably, in my opinion. Like, I mean,
he was that guy at the time. He was pre-Devin Hester, returning punts for touchdowns and stuff. He was that spectacular player.
There was a time between the college and pro game. You had Desmond Howard, you had Eric Metcalf in the NFL.
Ooh, love Eric Metcalf.
Baller.
Yeah, he was at Cleveland for a little while. Also at St. Louis, or I think they were St. Louis at the time.
Yep.
St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in St. Louis during the time of the Rams, if you will, and we had the Torrey Holt, the Isaac Bruce. We had all sorts of crazy smoking weapons coming out of the
man.
Kurt Warner just going like this.
Yeah, gotta love it. Hey, I got a question.
Yeah.
I got a question. I know we were talking about just various aspects of the sport of football, including college, but looking at the landscape of the NFL right now, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the fuck Jerry Jones is doing, but he's that owner that, despite what he does, like other owners have screwed things up and their teams suck. Despite what he does, this team is still decent. He's always going to have his following, but boy, Dallas should have won at least a Super Bowl or two in the last 20 years.
I'm thinking at least 3 or 4, probably. I mean, think about the Romo years that were wasted.
Yes. So, I mean, who do we see? Like, okay, let's break down NFL real quick by division. So let's start with the NFC. The NFC, who's going to be the best team coming out of the North?
I mean,
is it Detroit repeating?
I think Detroit's got the best nucleus coming back. The team with the most upside is the Bears. I think the Packers are obviously in the mix, but I think they overachieved last year. I'm going to be a biased fan in that. I'm not a Bears fan, but at the same time, I think the Packers overachieved last year because I still can't name anybody on their defense, honestly. Sad truth. Now their quarterback did exceptionally well. Jordan Love is good. Let's see how long it can go, but I think he's good and he's good to develop off of. The Vikings, frankly, are in a down year. I think they've got the Jeffersons of the world. They're going to come in with a rookie quarterback, I think, and a good rookie quarterback. I think they're going to get the guy. The Michigan kid's going to do really well there for the first couple of years. Let's see how it goes. But I think they're still going to be a notch back from the Lions for sure. And I think because the Bears have the defense, I'm going to pick them to pick the division.
Wow.
I think the Bears have the defense to win the division.
That's interesting. And I'm a Bears fan. I got my Chicago stuff. Actually, let's look at the real Chicago stuff, the Cubs.
Yeah, right.
I would have to say I expect Detroit to win the division again. I think that they showed last year that it wasn't
their coaching is phenomenal.
What's that?
Yeah. Their coaching is phenomenal.
Yeah, their coaching's phenomenal. He's got the players' attention. He's got the vibe that gets them excited. Yeah. And I want him to be my coach. He could be my coach in anything. Yes. And I feel like they have the pieces on offense, even though every now and again, Jared Goff sort of looks like the old Jared Goff that looks like he's ready to fuck up, trying to. But I think that they just have the overall better team. But I agree with you in one thing. And as a Bears fan, I've been a Bears fan for a long time. Even though I'm a Chiefs fan, I was born in Kansas City. I've lived here, for a long time. And I've lived the heartache of a Chicago fan. All right. Yep. Every year we pump it up. Every year we say this. Now, granted, Caleb is something different that we've never had in Chicago, ever. People are saying, Jay Cutler, please. But I've always had one issue with the Bears throughout the history of this franchise, or at least as long as I've been a fan, is the ownership never seeks to get a high-profile coach. They're always trying to rummage in the garbage to hope they find something of value and hope that one of the best hires that they had was Mike Martz, and he was over the hill at that point, trying to do seven step drops in an NFL where in 2 seconds the guy's in your shorts and he's trying to do 7-step drops with a porous offensive line.
Right.
Then you had Nagy, and I'm talking only offense because we've always been defensive coaches. Lovey was able to do a lot with what he had, but we still failed. And I'm sorry, where are you at? Baby hands Rex Grossman, where are you? I'm sorry, baby hand Rex Grossman. Anybody call? Oh, you suck. We should have had Kyle Orton in that Super Bowl doing that. But
yes, sir.
But we got Nagy, and Nagy thought he was the second coming of offensive Jesus and tried to do bubble screens and crappy stuff and things that weren't fitting the talent. And I feel
let's think about Matt Nagy for a second. So yes, he came off the quote unquote, our coaching tree, if you will, of the great Andy Reid. But people fail to realize even during the year that he excelled and we won the Super Bowl, he was still second fiddle to Andy Reid calling the shots. So people thought that Nagy learned, and obviously that wasn't the case because apparently Matt Nagy's not a sponge. Apparently he's a spooge.
I like that. Wordplay.
And that happens to a lot of coaches, I'm sorry to say. Like there's a lot of disciples that come out there thinking they're the second coming of Jesus, and it doesn't work out so well. Now, with Matt Nagy, he got taken back by the Chiefs last year. And if you really paid attention to the Kansas City Star and the Chiefs sports and everything else going on behind the scenes for the Chiefs, it wasn't him calling the shots still. Like even though he was the offensive coordinator.
Exactly. I think he was at the very beginning, but if you remember the beginning of the season, the offense was sluggish. Whoa. And Andy Reid took the reins over, and boom, they started playing. They started clicking. They started scoring.
And I don't know how much truth there is, but there was a bit of a revolt from the offense eventually. With the Mahomes, the Kelce's, everybody else was stepping up saying, hey, we need to flip the script here. We're going to take control of this. And that's where they threw it back to Andy Reid and the players, basically. And that's where we went on our run, obviously. So there
So
was,
they
there
should
was
fire. So basically, they should fire Nagy because he's not doing
they
the
should
job.
fire, and they might keep him as a figurehead just to pay him on a payroll. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be the guy that he's going to be running practice. Put it that way.
Back to the Bears, though. Back to the Bears. I feel like their biggest problem has always been the coaching.
Coach
They don't
Lovie
coach
Smith. I'm sorry,
to their
Lovie's a good
talent.
guy, but yeah, I mean, clearly Lovie has shown that he sucks at times. I'm sorry to say.
I mean, he's a great defensive coordinator. And sometimes that's where you need to be.
That's
like
where you're supposed to
where
be.
you are. I'm not saying you have to stay in your lane. You don't achieve greatness by just staying in your lane. However, maybe that isn't for you. Maybe you can't juggle 5 balls in the air and you only need 3. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like Lovey's like that. I feel like Eberflus is like that. I feel like
Think
there are
about
a lot
every
of
guy that's
coaches
come
out
off the
there.
Belichick tree. Every
What's
single coach has come off the Belichick tree has only been good at offense or defense. They have not been
That
good
is
at head coaching.
correct. That is correct. Patricia, Daniels, all of them. Matter of fact, they should just they should just take Belichick. Like all of the great coaches, if you look at their tree, starting from Bill Walsh, they meant something, and they all had something to do with the evolution of the sport. I don't feel like Belichick trees does that. Not one. Not name me one person from his tree.
There's been nobody off of his tree that's turned into a solid head coach. Now we could change the game this year with what's his name taking over in New England. I keep forgetting the name, obviously, but he was his former player and now his coach, obviously.
Oh yeah. I can't think of it now either, but yeah.
No, and I think there's good hope there. But let's see if it lasts 2, 3, or 4 years or whatever it needs to be to kind of prove that. But every single other coordinator that's come off the Belichick tree has miserably failed. Let's face facts. There is not a single success story in that whole thing as a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even the Brian Dables of the world are failing right now.
Well, and it makes you wonder, like, so you got the Shanahans, you got some good coaches, but I feel like there are probably a handful of those, and the rest of them are guys trying to find their way.
Yep. No, it's true. Because I mean, a lot of them come up in a system right now, and this is probably true going from the ground up, even from high school to college and everything else, where they're coaching one particular element, right, and not necessarily seeing the full scope of the field, maybe. And that's the case, I think, in a lot of different things. So to a degree, they become specialists, but not necessarily the overarching coach that needs to be, right?
But aren't you supposed to develop that? So if you're an offense coordinator, defense coordinator, you develop that understanding as you're doing your role. You start to see other things that are happening and start to learn a little bit more to be able to apply that more broadly than just the specific, team that you're coaching. Like offense.
Let's take that back to societal talk, opportunity and, suppression at the end of the day, right? Like, I think there's also politics involved in how people are being given the opportunity to succeed in those roles and set up to be in those roles. And that's a problem, I think, in everything, in corporate culture, coaching culture, the whole 9 yards. I mean, hell, the biggest indictment I give, and I think I was having a good talk with somebody in our company about this, was soccer right now. Men's soccer is in a failed state of disrepair right now.
You're talking about U.S. men's soccer, right?
U.S. men's soccer right now is an utter failure. I mean, given the talent, resources, and everything else we've got in this country, it is pathetic to see us fail on the world stage at every single level.
We're losing to everybody. Who did we lose to? Was the last one Morocco or something?
3-0. You lost a bunch of people.
Kicked their butts. Horrible coaching, but also at the end of the day,
knock on Morocco because they pushed Spain to their limit the other day. But my God, like, you have every resource in the world to groom good coaching, everything, the whole 9 yards. You have the best facilities. You have everything here, and it'll be showcased probably during the Olympics in terms of your facilities. Or sorry, not the Olympics, the World Cup in 2026. But you literally have nothing to show for it internationally. You have one of the worst teams. You have a team full of egotistical players, in my opinion. And yes, I'm calling out everybody all the way from Pulisic down that are self-righteous and they can't work as a team to win. That's where these national teams like Spain, France, everywhere else, these kids come up together. They know how to play together. That's why they balling. I mean, I'm watching Olympic basketball on the second screen right now with Serbia and Australia. Serbia was down 20 at one point in the second quarter here. They are now up. Because you know why? Everybody, Jokic, them boys, they all played together when they were kids.
and we've talked about that too. I think part of it is what you said, like they played together since they were teens or, 10, and they've
Yep.
built that team chemistry. But it's
Yep.
the U.S. and everything we do seems to be more individualistic,
And
grounding a
individualistic.
team together as opposed to people.
There's no idea of
And
bringing
the
up
Ryder
people
Cup is the
together.
best example of that. The Ryder Cup, to
Oh,
me,
yeah.
the Ryder Cup is the best example. You can get these guys, none of them could be in the top 10 in the world, but they'll play together and whoop your ass because they play with joy and support and
Yes, sir.
want. And the US players is like, well, I'm not really getting paid for this, so I'm out here, but I don't really like this guy over here because he's a rival. When it's like, you guys are on the same team. You go out and drink together, eat together, play together.
You remember a golfer named Colin Montgomery?
Man, I used to
He's the
hate
biggest
his
forward in golfing side.
I like him now. I used to hate his ass back in the
Oh,
day.
everyone used to hate it because the dude would just show up for Ryder Cup and kick your ass. Like, it doesn't matter
He
who you
would.
paired him with. You could pair him
It's
with
true.
whoever the hell you want.
It's true. He couldn't win on the tour. He couldn't win the big ones, but boy,
Nope.
he'll whoop your butt. But see, that's for every European player. And I think it goes
Yeah.
back to what you were talking about. That's why they brought the pros back. They brought the pros back because our college players couldn't beat the other players
right.
anymore. And
That's right.
and even with the pros, you can see the first couple of games, it took somebody like a LeBron to pull it out. But more importantly, and Steve Kerr, to get them to understand, you guys got to play like a team. I know you guys are all alpha dogs on your separate teams, but you need to come together and play the roles necessary for us to be a good team.
Think about that in terms of coaching. It took literally Popovich, Mike Krzyzewski, and Steve Kerr, like those type of figureheads to make this thing work. I forget who we had in 2004 that caused us the failure that was the coach back then. I can't even remember back then. But think back to it, like it took us, it was something we had to Google, obviously.
And by the way, it was Jared Mayo, and I forgot his name. Jared Mayo.
Gerard Mayo.
Yeah,
I remember that guy.
Remember he used to play a pretty decent player for the New England Patriots too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah. Because that was our failure year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think you're right.
It was 2004 or 2000, one or the other that we. Yeah.
Larry Brown.
See? Now, props to Larry Brown because he's had a longevity of a career, had success at every level, college, pro, and everything else. But at the same time, like that dude couldn't bring together egos. Because you remember, in college, he had one-man band. In college, he brought Kansas a title because we had Danny Manning. In the pros, he had AI.
Danny Manning. It was all Danny Manning.
In the pros, he had AI, and that's it. He had that man in Philly, So he wasn't that guy that was going to band together, 16 figureheads with different egos and try to bring home a title at the end of the day, especially in the Olympics. Now, it took the Popoviches of the world. It took Steve Kerr. It took Mike Krzyzewski. It took those guys with that extra coaching prowess, if you will, because they are definitely amongst the greats of coaching in that whole tree. Even the Phil Jacksons of the world, obviously, and all that, and Red Auerbach.
I'll ask you the question because there have been some arguments about how great coaches are, especially like a Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson, people's knock on him is that he always came in the ready-made teams, but there is an art. There's an art to coaching. There is an art to getting people to see the same vision, to work together that coaches don't get credit for. But I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, who really drives wins and losses? A coach or the players?
Players, 100%.
And I do feel that.
100%.
You can have
it's on the floor.
And
a
have
game
a bad
is one on the floor.
Yeah,
a game is one on the floor. A coach comes up with a plan to strategize against a team. It is a player's job to execute it. I could give my soccer teams, a philosophy on how to play, how to win, everything else. I can tie it back to a tournament that I had the kids play last year and tell them how to go about defending or going on the offense, stuff like that. Until they've executed it, it doesn't come to fruition. So at the end of the day, it's a player's responsibility and a player that makes the outcome of the game. The coach's job is to put them in the best position to execute. That has always been the case. Even with the corporate world, a manager or a director's job is to set up his team for success. Is my general Billy. Like it's his
Agreed.
job to make sure that they're set up to succeed. In the same fashion, I'd say that the guys that I just mentioned, they've set up their players well because they've controlled the egos, figured out the best and the worst out of each player, and figured out how to put it all together. It's
and
a
that's
management
where
skill.
Phil Jackson excelled, probably better than anyone else, because he dealt with some of the biggest egos, and yet he was able to get them to come to a singular thought and a singular action. And I'll give Phil Jackson credit, and there's an example of what I mean with coaches and players. I think this is a great example. Phil Jackson, when Jordan left, you had Kukoc and Pippen playing, and I think it was against the Knicks. And Jackson, Pippen was the alpha then, right?
Yeah.
So he thought. And then, Phil Jackson at the end of one of the games, it was a playoff game too, if I'm not mistaken, let him have the ball. He turned it over. Did it again. He screwed it up again. Then he decided, we're not going this route. I can see that this player isn't ready for this moment and can't execute the plan. And said, we want Tony Kukoc to take the last shot. And that's when Scottie Pippen did his little whiny little bitch attitude and threw the chair and all of that stuff. And he was mad, sat down pouting. Tony Kukoc scored the winning basket. So the coach made the call to change the plan to suit the need, and he did the right call. He saw that the player wasn't ready to execute what he needed, and that's where a lot of times coaches take the fall.
That's where the
players' inability to execute, or maybe in some cases it isn't just execute, it's a desire and want. Like when you really want something, you're going to execute it. When I used to play basketball and football, if I really got mad, I would just take the ball and go all the way down and score. And it's like, look, that's what we could do, guys.
Bread and butter.
You do. You make this great catch, man. Look, I don't care if I'm triple covered. Lemire, throw me the ball. That's what you do.
Yep.
And I just feel like Scottie was never there. And that's the difference, I think. Sometimes players make coaches look great, and sometimes they make them look like crap. But people like a Phil Jackson, the Red Auerbachs, the Steve Kerrs, Popovich, one of the greatest coaches ever.
Popovich, one of the greatest ever,
You learn how to take the tools that you have and be able to utilize them in the right way to achieve whatever the goal is for whatever you're doing. And he does.
I'll selfishly say that the thing that makes a coach great, and I learned this from coaches that I've had in my own life, they see things differently, because they see the global view of what needs to be done to get an overall win versus one person's success or another. And like you just said, it's about making the right decisions at the right times to put the player in the right position to be where he needs to be. For instance, John Paxson, way back in the day. And I'll give, credit given to Phil Jackson on how to use John Paxson, or Steve Kerr for that matter. Steve Kerr, when he hit that three during the playoffs, same thing. Like, there was times when certain players' numbers need to be called, and it doesn't matter who you are, but that time comes, and the coach's job is to figure out that optimal time to set that up. Any sport, doesn't matter where you are, you figure that out. And then obviously the player's job is to execute. Now, notice in that same vein that we're talking about, like the Jordan and the Jackson thing, we talk about Brady and Belichick and the opposite end in football. Similar things, team sports, everything else. In the Super Bowl versus in the playoffs. Now, I think we give Jordan a lot of credit for doing what was done, obviously, in the playoffs, right? Because the man just executed flawlessly. He hit Game 6. He hit everything. Now, and I don't know if we're ever going to get the truth on this. Do you think during the crucial times when the Patriots had to come up with a last-minute drive or last-minute, whatever it was it Belichick making that call and Brady executing, or was it Brady saying, hey, I'm going to put the ball in my hands and let's do this shit?
Well, I'm going to say this. You use Jordan as an example. I'm going to use Jordan as an example here. Sometimes the coaches call a play, but the real coach is on the field.
The field, yep.
So the coach, whether it's LeBron, Jordan, Brady, whoever it is, you're on the field. And Jim McMahon used to do this, and Mike Ditka used to get so pissed off. Mike Ditka would call a shitty-ass play, and Jim was like, fuck that, audible, boom, touchdown. He scored 3 against Minnesota in one game, and Ditka wasn't happy about any of them because he did something that was necessary to win, not following what the coach said. And I feel like there are times, especially with Brady, and that's why they broke. Like, you never hear Jordan talk about, Phil Jackson at all. And not that Brady belittles Belichick, but you could tell there was a discord there.
Yeah.
And I think it was because Belichick is a great defensive coordinator.
Yep.
He's not a great offensive coordinator. And if anybody wants to doubt that, what have they done since Brady?
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Okay, I mean, again, let's go back down to the coordinator line. Josh McDaniels, good offensive coordinator, bad coach. Matt Patricia, good on defense, not so good with anything else. Romeo Crennel, same story. Who was the dude with Crennel? I forget the other guy that got a head coaching job, I think. Also failed.
You're right. I think but I think it comes from, I think greatness in that vein, like the trees, it starts with that, whoever that the patriarch is of that tree or whatever. Belichick controlled things.
Controlled it.
I don't think he allowed people to grow the way other great coaches have.
No,
and I think
you're going to do this job,
yeah, and that stifled them from being able to do anything else. And I'll even say that Matt Patricia, okay, maybe he's a good defensive coordinator. I'm gonna question that too. So maybe it was Belichick barking orders to Patricia to do what he told him to do, and he was able to execute that. But when it came to Patricia trying to do it himself, I don't know. If you look back at what he did, when he was at Detroit or wherever else, was he
pencil on his ear wasn't that sharp? No.
Yeah. I don't feel like he really is a great defensive coordinator. I think he was just Belichick's puppet doing what he told him to do. I feel like you really have to allow people to grow. And you said it earlier, and I always taken this as a manager. The idea of a manager is I should be grooming you to take my job.
Yep.
I don't think Belichick did that. Whereas I feel the Bill Walshes and the Andy Reids and such allowed people the freedom to be able to grow and learn so that they could be able to develop into those roles. I don't think Belichick did that. And his predecessor, the tree he came from was Parcells. I'm trying to think who else is on Parcells' tree.
Good question. Who were the coordinators of the Giants in like the year, like, I don't know, 19, when they won the title with not Phil Simms, who was the backup quarterback? Bill shoot, I can't even think of the quarterback's name now. He went on to play with the Raiders. Shoot. Why am I losing track here? It was when Phil Simms went down and the other Giant quarterback stepped up.
Rutledge came to mind, but it's not Rutledge.
It's when the Giants beat the Bills in 91, basically. Or was it 90? 90 maybe. I forgot whatever year it was.
So wait, oh my God, I forgot how much Bill Parcells. So he's got Palmer, he's got Sperano, he's got Haley, he's got Sean Payton.
Sean Payton was a trade.
He's got Coughlin from the Giants. And then he's got Belichick, and then Belichick's tree, which included Nick Saban, who was a failure in the pros.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't control people like he could in college.
No, you say he's got full puppet mastery at the college level, which, you know what's funny? So they had SEC press, the SEC press event like about a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess somebody must have not given the memo to anyone, even at the SEC presser event. Nick Saban just walks in.
Whoa.
and two things go through my mind. I'm like, is he suffering from Alzheimer's from just repetition, having done this in years past and realizing he's not good anymore? Or in a bad way, does this take away the thunder of the head coach?
I mean, if Nick Saban enters any room, he's taking the thunder away from everybody.
He's taking the thunder off of anybody else.
Heck yeah. Everybody's like going, okay, yes,
we're not worthy.
They look like I can't think of the name of the people in Temple of Doom when they had the thing underneath in the ground. He was grabbing hearts out of people, and all those people were going, la 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 la. That's how you do when Nick Saban enters the room. I'm sorry, that is greatness. He is a GOAT.
Yep. No,
Hostetler.
Hostetler, thank you. Jeff Hostetler, thank you. Yes, Jeff Hostetler, yes. Man won a title.
Yep.
Now, he only won a title because Scott Norwood missed. And apparently that's an ongoing theme for the Bills. Not to knock last year.
If there's anybody
bad, man. As a
if
Chiefs
there's
fan,
anyone you have pity for, it's Scott Norwood. It's the Bart man. Those are people that you pity. You just do. Scott Norwood, wide right. Like everybody knows that. And not only was that just bad, it's the fact that it started a trend. Like they just lost. Who goes to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row? The Chiefs haven't even done that. But they won. The Bills lost every single, and they got like 15 Hall of Famers on there. They got Bruce on there. He was a killer DE.
We had everybody.
Come on, man. Come on. You had Jim Kelly. You had every running back you needed. You had
Thomas.
Thomas. You had
Thomas
Thomas.
was the man back then.
You had the receivers you had were nuts, and BB was not the best one. He was like the third best receiver you had. Come on, man. How do you not? And look at their defense. How many people are in the Hall of Fame from their defense?
Marv Levy was a great coach. I mean, I could go on and tell you about that Bills team for decades.
It's something about Buffalo. Buffalo and Cleveland. It's like those two teams just won't ever win. They just cannot win. They just don't know and will not know how to win.
I can't even tell you how shocking it was when I was sitting there watching. I'm like, hey, the Chiefs are going to lose this year. Fine, we had to go to Buffalo. We cost ourselves in the foot by having to go to Buffalo last year in the playoffs. And I'm thinking, okay, they set themselves up for greatness. Josh Allen did his job, got him down the field.
I thought that was the moment. That was the moment. They were supposed to win. They did everything that they were supposed to do. We now have home field advantage. We should beat the Chiefs.
My kids and I literally were watching there, and my daughter hates it when I'm screaming at the TV. But that's the loudest I've ever screamed in my life, and I was like,
like I said, some franchises are just doomed to failure. And I hate to say it like that because that's so absolute. Because I do want Cleveland to win. I actually liked Cleveland back in the day. Ernest Viner feels sorry for you. The Bills. I love the Bills. I wanted the Bills. First off, I wanted the Bills to win because I hated Dallas.
Everybody hated
Dallas. I hated all the teams the Bills had to play to win the championship.
Yep.
So I wanted them to win every time. And I'm always for the underdog, but it's just you just get this feeling like those teams will never win. You just feel that way. Like we'll be 50 years from now, not that we'll be hanging here 50 years from now, but they'll be talking about this going, they finally won a championship. It'll be like the Cubs and the White Sox after 100 years of futility, they win one. And then they go back into the futility bucket for another
all those
decade.
years of me living in Chicago and listening to Cubs fans. And granted, I am a Cardinals fan, so I hate Cubs fans inherently with a passion. But at the same time,
and vice versa,
respect given to the devotion of those Cubs fans for having lived as long as they have to suffer through what they have suffered. And I was there to listen in on what happened with Moises Alou and that whole stupidity with the Marlins. I mean, back in the day, I'm just sitting there like, how does it happen?
But see, that kind of attitude is why it happens. He was already booking his flight after that one little play. That one play did not define the whole series. Heck, afterwards, I think it was Alex Gonzalez, ground ball, chest high. Messes it up. And from there on, even though there were still games left and the Cubs were still ahead, it was doomed and gloom.
Yep. No, I don't think I fully appreciate until living in Chicago, listening to those Cubs fans tell their stories of every single year and everything. And then, of course, I move here. And then all of a sudden in 2016, I'm like, holy crap, this thing's going to happen. And, of course, your great closer comes on and I'm like, this is happening.
And even here's what's so funny about that.
You bring in Rolly, it's not gonna work.
Well, I'm sitting with my son, and I got a bottle of Jägermeister, and I'm like doing shots. I'm like, "Oh, we're winning. We're gonna win. We can't lose, right?"
Yeah.
And John, I called him John Madden, and Madden decided he wanted to be again. He wanted to put his imprint on the game.
So Madden, yep.
Why? Why were you putting that reliever in so early?
Yeah.
If it wasn't, I'm telling you, he tried to lose that game. If it wasn't for divine intervention, God, and you know, whether you believe in God or not, I'm just saying as part of this story, God came in and was like, you know what, we need a rain delay because if this goes on for another 20 minutes, they're about to lose. Rain delay. And of all the people who seemed to rally the troops, it was not the coach.
Yep.
It was Hayward who did that. Hayward got them in a better spot, changed that focus of, oh my God, we're about to fail. And then they came out and won it.
Yep.
But it was if for not for all of those things, we would still be talking about the Cubs not winning a World Series today.
Absolutely. Nope. I don't disagree. It was by divine intervention that guy got saved.
Guy was like, you know what? I'm sorry. This has been fun to watch for the last 100 years.
Yeah, I think I'm going to write in this book. I think we need to change this.
We gotta let this one go. Hey, plus, you know, like Penelope and Abe, they've been true followers of me, and they're 100 years old, and I got to give it to them because I'm about to take them off the earth too. So before I take them off the earth, I'm gonna give them a little joy. Sprinkle rain.
Esther and Abe deserve this one. Yeah.
I was trying to come up with some old name, right?
If I meet a kid named Esther,
hey, some fun Esther. Wow. Funny. You know what? Whenever I think of Esther, I think of Fred Sanford. Oh, the way he used to play with Aunt Esther. Oh my God. You're so ugly. I stick your face in some dough and make gorilla cookies. You know, just stuff that you couldn't say today because it was the 70s, you know, 60s, 70s that you could get away with. Yeah. But thank you, Lord, because I'm a Cubs fan and they at least won in my lifetime. So I'm happy for that.
It needed to be done. Now, what do you think about them this year? Do you think they make the playoffs?
Who?
The Cubs.
Who? The Cubs in another sport? Not baseball. No. The funny thing was they started off the year looking like a team. And then they went into that.
The reason I say that, the reason I say that kind of jokingly is like they somehow made moves at the trade deadline, and I'm thinking to myself, "You're way out of this. What the hell are you doing?" Like,
I don't know what the standings are, but not that long ago they were like 10 games out of the division.
I mean, it's the same thing with my Cardinals. Started shitty, they went on fire, now they're back off. Like nobody else in the Central other than the Brew Crew is making it. Simple as that, or maybe the Reds, I should say.
Yeah, the Brew Crew. The Reds actually have that kind of team where they, you know, they could make some
firepower.
Yeah, they can make some noise.
Yeah,
they can make some noise. And honestly, as much as it'd be nice, you know, like I grew up with the 70s Yankees and Reggie Jackson and them being sort of like the dominant team, I'm happy New York isn't winning. I'm happy, and I don't want to see them win either. I don't want to see them. I don't care who it is. I don't want to see the Dodgers, and I don't want to see the Yankees win. I don't care who else.
I've tried to raise my son in the same fandom as I have. However, he has embraced the Baltimore Orioles since he's been here, and he was born here, which makes sense. So, you know, we go out to enough Orioles games and everything else, and it's great for him. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to see the Orioles win because they've homegrown a team at this point. Every single one of their players is from their farm system. It's awesome to watch, honestly, every time we go to the stadium, even if I watch the game casually. Like, it's just cool to watch this team develop because it's, again, working class mentality, working class city, trying to do its thing in what's obviously a smaller market compared to the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees in their own division. But at the same time, this whole Baltimore mentality of, you know, the Ravens and everything else we just mentioned, it's cool to see. Like last year, you know, we were the number one seed walking into the baseball playoffs. They lost first round, arguably so, which was fine.
And they look good. They look good.
And they look great. The young talent on that team is phenomenal. This team is built to go the next 5 years. They just got to build a pitching staff that can close it out.
I was going to say they need a better pitching staff.
I honestly think the AL finals this year will probably be Cleveland and Baltimore. I think it's going to come down to Cleveland just having a better pitching staff at the end of the day because both teams are excellent.
One thing I'm going to say, we never even got out of the NFC Central when we started talking.
That's true. Let's go back to the stadiums. Yeah, let's go back to NFL. I mean, we covered the NFC North. Let's go to the NFC
North. Okay, the one I want to talk about, NFC East.
NFC least, as I like to call it, because
Used to be.
once in a few years they'll have a team that sprouts up or whatever. I think the Eagles will still take the division. I think Dallas has a formidable chance, but they have no defense, in my opinion. Micah Parsons is it, and that's the truth. They don't have enough.
They get Diggs back, though.
They get Diggs back.
And
I don't know what to make of it because honestly, the Eagles have too much firepower for my taste. They've got 2 stud receivers. They've got a running back. They've got a quarterback. They've got that offense built to last at the end of the day. And because of that, I think they overcome the Dallas defense, and that's it. And frankly, Dak's got him in, if Dez decides to sign, or not Dez, sorry. I'm thinking Dez Bryant. It's not Dez Bryant. It's what's his name? CeeDee Lamb, sorry, not Dez Bryant.
You're talking about
yeah. Sorry, I'm
wait a minute. You brought back Dez Bryant? Wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, similar Diva status, I hate to say. I mean,
but you know what? Dallas is screwing themselves because none of their players want to play for him. You're not going to pay me. Dak might just leave. He might just play this season out and leave. CeeDee Lamb might play, or he might not play. And Micah Parsons, he needs to get a contract. How do you let your 3 best players not get a contract, and you're the richest franchise in NFL history?
Exactly.
Cheap ass.
Richest contract in sports, almost. Yeah, shoot. Yeah. No, that needs to be fixed. So that's the reason I say it's Eagles, Cowboys,
and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the rest. I'm sorry.
The G-men are going to be in the gutter. The Commanders probably in third, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they overtook the Cowboys. I think Jaden Daniels is going to have a great season. We'll see what happens.
There's potential. There's potential for that. I mean, they weren't horrible; they were just bad. So
and that's the thing. Looking on the outside in as a casual fan of the Commanders in this area, I think they've got some great talent on the team, but they just don't know how to put together. And now that said, they've got new coaching, new quarterback, everything else, new ownership, everything else coming in. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think they're still 2 or 3 years away.
It's always,
The Giants, I'm sorry.
Downward trajectory.
This is the Giants. Okay, Eli won 2 Super Bowls. Incredibly against the odds, 2 Super Bowls as the wild card.
Let's talk ownership again. And this is, you're talking about another owner that's been around for, a half a century with the Mara family. It's just like the
Mara, who cares? They suck.
And that's the problem. You got 2 people with 2. So it's actually one family. The Rooneys and the Maras are one family. However, one works a little differently than the other. If you think about it, the Rooneys have kind of done a hands-off approach, if you will. I think for the most part, where they let Tomlin run the show and it works well. The Maras, on the other hand, have never found a coach. Since Bill
they're
Parcells.
another one of those teams. Remember, they had the Jim Fassels of the world and all of these guys, right? So I just feel like, for me, I think the biggest thing with them, the biggest problem I have with them is Saquon Barkley, even though he might have had some injuries, Saquon Barkley or Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Who are you paying the money to?
And see, that's where I get lost in the whole conversation. I could bring up a lot of different, controversial theories on that. But at the end of the day, it's just stupid. Let's put it that way. I'll put it very stupid, very, very flatly. I think they paid Daniel Jones because they thought they were in a situation where they're not going to be able to go get another quarterback. And they're like, well, who else are we going to get for $40 million? I'm like, $40 million. I don't care what realm or what century we're living in. $40 million is a shitload of money. And when you're devoting it to a guy that's never won, it doesn't make sense. So that to me, if I'm in any era of football, you go back and reset. You say, screw this, bye-bye, let's start over.
And that's my point. So you said what I was thinking too about Daniel Jones. You paid him all that money. You didn't pay Saquon, you paid him. He hasn't done anything. He's been as injury prone as Saquon has. And yet you paid him top-notch NFL quarterback money when you could have just said, let's say, we're losing even with this guy. Let's not pay him. And we can use this money to build our defense, to build our wide receiver core.
Exactly.
And then we'll be able to hit the quarterback, which if they would have been bad enough, they could have hit the quarterback lottery this year. Take your pick of the top 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks.
easily capitalized this year, and they would have built an entire team to last. Saquon would have been in like year 4 or 5, and it would have been perfect to build on. Absolutely. Saquon's quad by itself is bigger than Daniel Jones. I'm sorry.
He's like the old Robert Newhouse on the Cowboys. He used to have this
dude,
his
like
thigh was bigger than like my shoulder to shoulder. His thigh was that big. It's like, are you kidding me?
That dude a front line, and he will tear people apart. The problem is he's never had a front line with the Giants. The last time he had a front line,
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's how he gets injured. That's exactly the point. You're absolutely
That's
right.
how he gets injured. And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing I don't understand the Giants' logic on. Saquon did what he did when he was the offense. Why would you let that guy go and you keep the guy and you pay this guy like 10 times more you would have paid him?
You keep the guy that can't even get a ball to the receivers, and I can't even name any receivers because you've done stupid spending there too, obviously in the wrong ways. Like you've got, it's the whole wrong premise of how to build a team. Now, I thought that was going to change with Brian Daboll because he came from the Bills and he knew what, he had Josh Allen and that whole crew. So I thought, okay, he's going to try to change up stuff, try to bring in some offense. It's the same stupid shit.
Same stupid shit. And I got one thing to say. How do you pay a guy that much money when he did something that was akin to the Mark Sanchez butt fumble thing? He had a breakaway touchdown and tackled himself.
Yep.
That's the guy you want to give hundreds of millions of dollars to? And you didn't want to pay Saquon?
Notice that this is the city of New York that has the 2 most embarrassing plays in NFL history.
This is what I'm talking about. And actually, there's one more. What happened? The fumble in the Meadowlands with Herm Edwards when they didn't do the kneel down. You would actually hand the ball off, even though it was basically the concept of a kneel down. They didn't do kneel downs back then. Guy fumbles, Herman Edwards picks it up, touchdown. That's just again. Not a team that can't win because the Jets have won 1 Super Bowl, the Giants have won a couple, but you just wonder if when will they ever do anything again?
Well, I'll go back so far as to think, okay, even when the Giants won the 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning, and yes, credit given to those teams for overcoming the Patriots, for God's sakes.
Undefeated.
Eli Manning could always walk into a room. His grandkids could walk into a room and always hold it over Tom Brady's kids. Like, it's just that bad. My great granddaddy still whoop your daddy.
we didn't beat you once, but we beat you twice, and we beat you when you had no losses until us.
They beat perfection. They beat Randy Moss.
They beat Randy Moss. I feel bad for that because
I feel bad for Randy because that dude was the most ballinest receiver you could possibly have.
All day. If I had Randy Moss and like a Lynn Swan, I just throw the ball up and watch them make acrobatic catches all day long.
I still don't understand how did the Vikings not get to a Super Bowl with Chris Carter and Randy Moss?
I don't know, but I'm going to tell you this. My own personal thoughts. I'm big on, we were mentioning team and chemistry. Was Chris Carter that team guy?
Team guy meaning?
Meaning Stephon Diggs ran himself out of Buffalo because he got a big mouth. Yeah. Chris Carter was sort of like that too. And I'm not saying he hasn't turned into a great guy and doesn't do great things for other people. I'm just saying as a teammate on the field, remember Chris Carter used to have some blow-ups on the sidelines, a lot of them. And I just wonder if having Randy Moss take some of that shine away from him started, like weighing on the team.
Wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised, but you're right. How did they not win?
I mean, there's been some dynamic duos in the history of football. And you're just thinking to yourself, like, how the hell did these people not win? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
How did Brett Favre not win when he went to Minnesota and they were like 14-2 or 15-1 or something? How did they not win that year?
Exactly. Yep. No, like I said, there have been some enigmas in sports. Obviously, the Patriots being, the king of all. But I mean, that was just it's mind-boggling to understand. But going back to the Giants, at the end of the day, they're still going to be the gutter feeders of the NFC East at this point. It is what it is.
I want to get to the other three. Can we get to the other three? And then we'll save the AFC for our next show.
Let's go to the NFC South because it's the easier one.
Ah, that's the easiest one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the NFC South, you've got Kirk Two Chains back in Atlanta right now.
2 Chainz. Honestly,
Yeah, Kirk
I
Two Chains
love
and
Kirk.
Ludacris back
I
down
love me some Kirk Cousins because of what he did in Washington and what he
there.
did in Minnesota. Guys,
Yep.
nobody ever gives him credit for anything. Supposedly mediocre quarterback. He's getting paid, and he's made the teams that he was on better when he was on them.
Like I say, look at the stats. The man holds his candle to everyone else in history in terms of stats at the end of the day. And that's the reason he's getting paid what he is, and that's the reason he's brought into teams the way he does. That said, the talent sitting on that Atlanta roster mixed in with a Kirk Cousins, or if the other guy happens to get the starting nod, the rookie, I forget his name. Either way.
Oh, see, I'm sorry. They can't do that. That
was a
would make no
bold
sense.
move.
You don't go and pay Kirk Cousins that money and then go get the guy from Washington to take over his job.
I don't understand how Mr. Home Depot didn't overrule that on draft day. Like, it doesn't make sense. And I call him Mr. Home Depot because Arthur Blank reminds me of the guy on the Monopoly board. That dude is dressed to the nines on the sideline, got the slick back head. He looks like with a pointy nose. Like he looks like that dude. Like he's just that billionaire baller.
When you said that, it just reminded me of an Ace Ventura skit or part of Ace Ventura. Remember when he went down? They had that swing thing. And he was like, he hit the guy. He's like, yeah, you look like the Monopoly guy. Boom, he hit him. And like, boom, he hit him again. He was all like, it was hilarious. And I'm thinking of Blank doing that. That's just Arthur Blank.
I swear to God, every time you see that dude on TV, he looks like he's the billionaire ball. Like that dude is just.
That's hilarious.
And he doesn't even suit up. He's got the vest. He's got the whole look. He's pimping ain't easy, don't you know?
But I feel like what he's done, first off, you should have never took that Super Bowl to New England, and you cost me some money.
Exactly. Yep.
They went to another Super Bowl when they were doing the Dirty Bird. Remember that? With Anderson,
Jamal Anderson, baby.
Yep. There you go. Didn't win though. Yep. They're in one of those franchises. I feel like they got all of the components, and they're in the right division. Talk about being able to easily win a division. Who are you playing?
It still baffles me that, Drew Brees, he got his love one year, which was great. I applauded for that. But all it took was a little something from any one of those owners, whether it be New Orleans, Atlanta, Tampa, to overcome and take over. Now, the fluke year that Cam Newton took, the Panthers to the divine, to the divine land.
Super Bowl.
That happened because Cam Newton, another guy that I thought coming out of college, the dude had some game, don't get me wrong, but I think he had the wrong influence, including his daddy around him. That was a whole different issue.
Yeah, plus he was sort of a jackass when he was in college, too.
He was a diva.
He was a diva. That's the word. He was totally a diva. And then we rewarded his diva-ness or whatever with money. So he just, all of a sudden, he was a super diva.
I mean, not to knock it, but the dude did have one of the greatest fantasy football seasons in history.
And another thing is, I felt like he was a lot of their offense, even if they did have a Mushin Muhammad or whoever they might have had at the time while he was there. He was running the ball. He was passing the ball. The only thing he didn't do was pass the ball to himself and catch it.
To himself. Yeah, exactly.
So Cam, you are a diva, but I tell you, you did produce, and they shortened your career because they put so much on your shoulders. Yeah,
no protection, no nothing, no help. There's no question there. I mean, that was a divine run, to say the least, and it was pretty cool to watch. But at the same time, like, I go back to the same story, like the Tampa's of the world, who have the richest people in the world owning their team. By the way, they own the same team that owns Manchester United, the billionaires club down in New Orleans, because honestly, it doesn't cost anything to live down there. Let me tell you. and then you got Mr. Moneybags, billionaire quaff Home Depot here. It doesn't take much to win out of that division and then make your run. So to that point, in terms of who could be there this year, I think Atlanta's got the best shot. I think Tampa is going to be I think Tampa and New Orleans is going to be an interesting thing, because for New Orleans, it depends who's at quarterback. Do you bring back the guy that steals crabs, Jameis Winston?
I just talked about him last night. We were talking about quarterbacks, and I said he was stealing crabs when he was at Florida State. So you can't trust him for shit. Plus, He was a great quarterback, and he was a bad quarterback. He's the 50-50 guy. He could throw you 50 touchdowns and 50 interceptions.
Exactly. He'll steal you the crabs or he'll get you a touchdown. It's one or the other. It doesn't work out that well. And that dude, like when you hear him in pressers and stuff like that, like there's a running joke that you say that you can't change people over time. And in this case, there is definitely a situation where money hasn't changed that man in a good way. He's still down to his roots and he's pretty down to earth. But his mannerism, his everything, like he just comes off as that dude that you question his professional integrity at times.
I mean, and he's got talent, but I agree with you. I just feel like one moment he might be that quarterback you want. The next moment, not only is he stealing your crabs out of the local store, but you're eating it on the back porch playing dominoes, and he could care less about football.
Now, he fits the New Orleans vibe perfectly. I think he's a great fit for that city and that culture. There's no question. That dude straight on Creole, if there ever was one.
But they aren't going to win with him. They can't win with him.
No,
and they can't win with Tyson. They can't win with the Tyson guy being quarterback Hill. Tyson Hill should either be a quarterback or a wide receiver. That Cordell Stewart experiment with him, I don't know.
To me, Taysom Hill strikes me as another Wes Welker. He's a walking concussion waiting to happen. Unfortunately, the man's going to get cross-checked somewhere along the way here and not have a future. Unfortunately, I think at some point if they're not careful with him.
So you think it's Atlanta and then Tampa Bay or New Orleans?
And then New Orleans and then Carolina's still rebuilding.
We don't even talk about Carolina. They're not worth the conversation, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, and I agree with the other ones too. I do feel like Philly is head and shoulders the best team in the East. But I think the other one, though, I think Detroit will win. You had Chicago winning the division. I'd like to see that come to fruition. We'll see how that happens. Now, let's transition.
Week 16, Week 18 matchup with those two going down to the final would be great.
Yes, I agree with that. And we'll see. I mean, it's very possible. And boy, if that could happen for the Bears to finally actually hit on a quarterback and they play well and they got a good defense, that would be awesome.
Yep.
What about the West? So obviously San Francisco, everybody's picking them to go back to the Super Bowl again.
Yep. I mean, as long as they've got CMC and the whole weaponry back there with Debo and everybody else and George and you can name off so many people in that defense and everything else, I don't see how they're not the favorite. The Rams are, I think, still in a rebuilding mode, but obviously, Matt Stafford's still there, and Matt Stafford's still going to get the ball to Puka and the man.
He's going to be my first pick again once Cooper. Oh wait, did you say Cooper Kupp?
Kupp pitches every ball that you could possibly. That man has like glue in his hands.
He is amazing, and they talk about all the other receivers. The Devontae Adams and the Jeffersons. Yeah. Why are they not talking about Cooper Kupp? Why not? Because that dude, my fantasy. That's my fantasy wide receiver. Hoping he doesn't get injured, but that's my fantasy wide receiver right there. Now he's got the other rookie. He's got the rookie who's just as good. That dude.
I think Stafford gets back to the way. I think Stafford has a 5,000-yard season. I think Puka and Kupp break 1,000 yards, if not more, together.
I can see that.
Receiver. I don't know who the running back is with the Rams these days, but I'm sure they'll come up with something with Sean McVay's system because Sean McVay, another guy, great coach. I think he's got the right skills. He knows how to put thing together. He can make it work, but he's got to get a few more pieces in play at the end of the day.
I would agree with that, but they're going to have some issues because, part of the reason why the Rams were so great was the defense at one time. And I'm sorry, Aaron Donald, did he retire?
I think he is officially retired at this point.
Okay, so there's one piece gone, a big piece. Who was the guy with the big mouth? Oh, he's not even on their team anymore. The guy with the big mouth who was in Carolina, who a cornerback who thought he was the best cornerback ever.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about, but the guy was useless. Yeah.
Number 5. The guy thought he was, everything. He thought he was Deion Sanders and more.
He thought he was Deion Sanders, but more, but he's not exactly.
No, not even close. No. But I feel like they're going to have some issues on defense. So if they can't score points,
if you don't have a defense, you can't shut down the Niners at the end of the day. The Niners are going to put up 20, 30 points a game. There is no question about that.
I don't care who you are. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, you got to be able to hold your own. Now, the X factor. So I think it's kind of going to be, like we just said. I think the Niners won. At 2, honestly, I don't know if it's the Rams. I think the Rams are going to have a prolific offense enough to score points, but I don't know if they could beat teams. At that said, that team in Seattle, they still got that crazy little Pete Carroll guy.
And
Gino's the man still.
they're getting way more out of Gino than they anticipated.
Yes,
and he's looked good. And they still have a good receiving core. If you can get why I'm at a loss for words. If you can get him to stop acting like a baby and be a little bit more mature.
Yep.
Yeah, Metcalf. He could be a great receiver, but he reminds me of the guy who used to be on the Bears, on Carolina, and the Jets, Brandon Marshall. He reminds me of Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall could have been one of the best receivers in the league, but he had this chip on his shoulder and something in his head that was just telling him.
He had psychological issues, and I get that. At the same time, like Eric Metcalf has got a pedigree. Like his dad was an NFLer, a baller NFLer at that. This guy just got an ego like there's no tomorrow for some reason because of how shredded he is. First of all, I mean,
but that's the problem, though. That's the problem. He turns into one of those guys like the Odell, when Odell was complaining in New York and all that, where he's not getting well enough and all of this other stuff. And you got the receiver on the other side is just as good, and he's a little bitty guy, but he's really good. You got to
the X factor that I love for Seattle for a number of years is Lockett. I'm telling you,
Lockett. That's what I'm saying.
Lockett.
He can play, and he makes big plays at big times. And if you look at their running back core, they got 2-3 good running backs. If one goes down, you put another one in there, he'd be 1,000-yard runner. So they got
a play system out there, which is nuts to say the least.
So I agree with you. Actually, if I were to say that would have been my second pick. So I would have gone San Francisco, Seattle.
Yep.
I'm not sure about the last two. I think the Rams are in that rebuilding phase. I'm not
Rams
sure where the Cardinals are. You can't trust the Cardinals.
I'm sorry, but Cliff Kingsbury, you got to go. Kyler Murray, I'm sorry, you're not an NFL quarterback, despite what you think.
He looked the part for a minute, but I think he makes more mistakes than he makes.
He looked the part when he was sitting on stilts.
Yeah, I just feel like. So now that we have those, so we're basically saying San Fran, and I'm not looking at wild cards. Yeah. I mean, we could say who the wild cards would be, but we're looking at San Fran. You got Chicago winning division. I got Detroit. We got the Eagles. We both agree on that. And then we're saying that Atlanta with the potential of either Tampa Bay or New Orleans.
Those are 5. Let's say those are 5. Who are your other 2 wild cards at that mix? Probably the Cowboys, I'm thinking.
Well, maybe. The Cowboys has to be one. And the other team, the other wild card to me would be either Seattle or the second team in the North.
I agree.
The North will not have 3 or 4 teams like they had the potential to do.
No, we are. No, in our scenario, we are saying both Detroit and Chicago. So we're saying potentially a third team coming out of the North.
I would take Detroit. Then if it's Detroit or Chicago, I would take the other one as the second team.
Yes, exactly. But I think there could be 3. I think the Packers or Seattle is my other 7th team, basically. Because remember, now we have 7.
It's funny. I think the Packers, who could also win the division, can also be the 3rd place team in the division because what are they going to do for a running back now? Because they gave away their running backs, right? Isn't Dylan gone too? Did both of them go?
I can't remember if it was the second one too, but Aaron Jones is gone. So
I know Aaron Jones is gone, but isn't Dylan? He was the other.
I thought he was gone too. I thought AJ Dillon was gone too. I think.
Yeah. Right. So they both are gone. What are they going to do? Now they got a good receiving core and everything, but I just wonder. I'll put Seattle over Green Bay in that scenario.
Yeah, I think Seattle over Green Bay in that situation. A little bit more experience, and Pete knows how to come up with stuff coaching wise. I give him some credit there. I still don't trust. I believe. I think Stephen A. Smith always says Matt LaFleur, as they call him. Something about the French and putting them into cheese country doesn't work too well there.
I just think honestly, Green Bay is going to be one of those teams. They only got 2 Super Bowls, right, out of Favre and Rodgers. 2 of the greatest quarterbacks ever.
Yep. No, I mean, at the end of the day, in the first one, I think I still chalk up more to Reggie White at the end of the day.
Well, they had a killer ass defense. You put Leroy Butler and a few others up there. And say,
Yeah, exactly.
So again, I feel like they just don't have that, and they may not have that again. And I think overall, I don't know what the timing is, but I know we had one more topic we want to talk to, and maybe do close the session out. But I would say for the conference championship, it's going to look familiar. It's going to be the Eagles and the Niners. That's what I'm seeing. Yep. I don't see any other team stopping that.
Nope, I agree. I wholly agree. And that Eagles Niners matchup, I think, is going to come down to home field, in my opinion. I agree with that. I think the Eagles take it. I think if it's in San Francisco, I think the Niners pull it off somehow. It's going to be interesting. I think the Eagles have a little more depth, maybe at the defensive side of the ball. And the sad truth of it is the 49ers, that offensive power is just sick. I mean, especially whether Ayuk is there or not, you still got a four-headed monster coming at you. You know?
Yeah. I mean, Ayuk would make it better, but they also have some other guy, even though the other guy is holding out too, the guy that they were going to substitute Ayuk with. Right. But I think the key there, I hate to say it, and honestly, it's the key for any team. It's injuries, because Debo gets hurt. McCaffrey could get hurt.
They're and that's the biggest risk for the 49ers, is the fact that they don't have enough depth to take over their injuries. And if one of those players goes down, they're a whole different team every time. We've seen that historically, obviously.
And if Kittle is not there, it's a big difference. People don't realize what
he's an X factor.
Yeah, he can hit the middle, and he's got the middle of the field. He's not there. Feel like
his protection. His protection on that line is what his protection on that line is what gives Brock Purdy the ball to get it out to Debo, to get it to Ayuk, to get it to everybody else. Like, Kittle does a hell of a job blocking on that line that people don't give credit for.
Oh, he's a good blocker. Yeah, he's a good blocker, but I think the guy, at one point, he was the second best tight end in the league.
Oh, he's still the offensive weapon of the year. I mean, there's no question. I mean, that dude,
if I'm you, I pull in another, because McCaffrey, you got to have him coming out of the backfield. But if I need to have two running backs back there, then that's what I do. The other running back is a blocker. I mean, you got enough weapons to be whatever you want to be. But here's what I'm thinking. Minus an injury to Saquon Barkley, I think the Eagles go to the Super Bowl. As a matter of fact,
I think so too.
As a matter of fact, and I just did this because I'm a betting guy, to some degree, I have a bet that Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl this year. And
I think they have enough depth and talent to do it. There's no question.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm a Chiefs fan, and I think the Chiefs are going to repeat. But if they didn't, that would be the team that I think out of the rest of the NFL that's going to.
Wholly agree with that factor. I think the only other team that could throw a wrench into that, and we'll talk about this on the next segment with the AFC, is those Ravens.
Those Ravens are bad, boy.
And let me tell you, they're hungry after last year. They're real hungry.
Well, and quite frankly, what do you think? I know we're off NFL, probably talk about something real quick, but what about Miami? Tua just got signed, and I've been hearing all sorts of things about, that's a bad signing.
As much as I like all the talent on all the different sides of the ball there, and they've got a lot of potential both offensively, defensively, everything else, and they play in the AFC North, and they should win the North. I think that'll be something we'll talk about next time.
They play in the East, not the North.
Oh, sorry, the East. Sorry, yeah. Let me rephrase that. Yeah, I call it the North because all the teams show up north physically.
Plus, that's by far the best division.
Yeah, it's a crazy division. But that said, I think what costs them, and I still haven't bought into the hype of him, is Mike McDaniel. And the fact that he's still a young coach, he's kind of wishy-washy when it comes to the big moments in terms of coaching. Because even last year, they played the Chiefs first round. I think they had more firepower than the Chiefs, but they couldn't do it, honestly.
You got a good point there.
Yep.
So what about the Jets? Because I think Miami's going to do some things that people weren't anticipating. I'm tired of hearing the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. Honestly,
everybody is.
I would love to see the Jets do well because as a franchise, they've done nothing since Namath. But I can't stand Rodgers. I'm sorry. The guy is one of the best quarterbacks ever, but he's such a I'm the smartest guy in the room every time, and I want to be provocative, and I want to do. And it's like, dude, you're just a quarterback. You are not the most interesting person in the world.
He's not a team leader, and
No.
and I'm sorry, but there are no team leaders with the Jets right now. As much as I'd like to give credit to even that wide receiver they got, I keep forgetting his name.
Yeah, Wilson.
I think he's going to be a baller in his own right.
Yes,
he can't be the leader because you've got this big aura in the room named Rodgers. You know, and that's the problem. You got the diva in the room. You're never going to get that leadership role with the diva in the room. So that's going to kill him. Robert Saleh, I'm sorry, he's a great coach, but again, another guy that's probably good on one side of the ball, but probably not that great as a head coach. And he's going to get overruled by Rodgers all day long on the field, I think.
Bingo. That's what the problem's going to be with the Jets, because at the end of the day, who's the one? We talked about this. Saleh might tell him what to do, but when Rodgers gets on the field, he's going to do what he's going to want to do. And if he's unsuccessful, Saleh, because of all of the things that the Jets did to accommodate him, that wasn't Saleh who did that. That was the ownership. But the ownership can fire him and everybody else.
Yep. That was all Woody Johnson and the craziness up top, because they're trying to get the hype going. They need ticket sales.
Yeah, we can talk more about that in our next show.
Absolutely.
I know we wanted to hit a couple of things relating to global politics, but also let's talk about what's happening in politics right now. The VP was announced, and I'll give it to you.
Governor of Minnesota is going to be the VP. I believe his name is Walz, if I'm not mistaken. Strategic pick. Nothing surprising. I think Harris was going to go with anybody that's in a swing state, so it was going to be either Ohio, Pennsylvania, or Minnesota. Surprising that he went with Minnesota, because as an average politics guy, I ain't heard of him. I don't know what you've done. I can't tell you.
I was going to say, I can't tell. Could you tell me something that is notable about this guy that would make it?
And I hate to say it, but that's the running joke right now with both sides of politics. Tell me what you've done and tell me what you're going to do the next 4 years. And until somebody tells me that between now and election day, it's still baffling to think what the country is voting for at the end of the day. Are we just voting for the lesser of two evils? I'm sorry, regardless of which side you're on.
Well, and you said the phrase that I've been talking to some other people about this, both Republicans and Democrats, and I just call myself a person. I don't really want to side with one or the other. I think that, and this is where I'm, as a voter, as an American citizen, very disappointed in what, and we've talked about this, what the two parties brought to us. I guess this is refreshing to see Kamala here versus Joe, because I feel like Joe wasn't up to the task, and they could easily use everything about him as a way to promote Trump. Yes. I don't think that they can do that now with Kamala. I don't think it's the same thing. And it is strategic to try to get someone in a swing state and try to get those votes. I still think right now it's a toss-up. I'm not sure who's going to win, but I do feel like we're always voting for the lesser than. We didn't have Kamala was just thrown in there because of the situation and circumstances. Why didn't we groom somebody? And when I say we, on either side of the fence, the Republicans had Trump come back. They didn't even put up a fight. Nobody was groomed to do that. Same with the Democrats. Nobody put up a fight. There was no more grooming. Where have politics gone? Where all of a sudden you are left with, you said it, the lesser of two evils. We've always had the lesser of two evils, but I feel like now
that's literally the last two elections. I said that's literally the last two elections, 16 and 20. We voted for the lesser of two evils on all sides at the end of the day. I'm sorry to say. The last time we voted for a leader in the country was in 2012. Like it or not, Barack Obama was a leader. Hell, Mitt Romney would have been a leader. I don't care. Both of them were leaders. They were willing to take the responsibility, grab it by the horns, and go forward. We have nobody in the country that's willing to do that at any stage. President, senator, whatever the hell it is at this point. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And like you said, we've now locked ourselves in this two-party system that, frankly, we have now been brought forth two of the worst candidates. Here, pick from the best of these two rotting apples.
Exactly. So it's not even feeling like you're the lesser of two evils. Well, it is the lesser of two evils, but it's just both really bad. Why are we picking out of garbage?
Yep.
Why are we picking out of the garbage?
Yeah. Why aren't we going to the farm and finding the right people? That's the best. That's the best phrase I say.
And where's the youth? Where's the infusion of youth? I'm sorry, and I get it. We got some old dusty ass motherfuckers on our dollar bills. We've got slave masters on our dollar bills. Remember that, guys.
Yes.
Just got to say that. We still hold on to this whole concept that you need to be like 85 years old and dust coming off you when somebody pats you on the back in order to run for president. Why?
When did it become okay to think that people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s have the ability to make the best? I get that they are maybe some of the wisest people because they've seen a lot of things. I get that whole premise of argument. But I'm sorry, we're in a day and age where things change dynamically daily. So you have to be agile and you have to be able to adjust to those things, regardless of what field or whatever you're in. So at that point, politics has to take on a faster flavor. So it should be people in their 50s and 60s, not their 70s and 80s. That should be trying to, move with the dynamic times of what we have. I mean, frankly, in my opinion, all of Congress needs a toilet flush. We need to start over.
Don't disagree, but make sure you wipe and wash your hands afterwards.
Yeah, we're gonna desanitize that place, kind of like with some of that COVID spray.
We need that. I agree, and I agree with the whole infusion. We need somebody who can be nimble in thought, who's connected to the world today, not the world from yesterday. And while there's wisdom in age, there should be so Trump was president and then Biden was president, and now they're both coming again. How old is Trump?
80 something and 80 something. I think both of them. Yeah, or Trump might be 78. I can't remember but either way, you're close to octogenarian. Let's put it that way.
Well, and that's my point. So why are these people still even candidates? We are fueling the idea that you're going to be 85, because if he does get elected, by the time he finishes, he will be 80 something.
You're asking we as a country to empower people who are in their 80s, who, I'm sorry, both could die in office. I will be morbid,
Yeah, that would be morbid. Don't want that to happen to anybody.
Don't want that to happen, God forbid. But I'm just saying, you got to think about the again. I think back to the fact that everything is dynamic, fluid, involves more activity, is more robust, and frankly involves faster flavor these days in politics and everything else. You can't expect two people in their 80s to be in charge of such a powerful country that involves that kind of dynamic leadership and cynicism, and charisma and everything else that's necessary to be a world leader. You need people of a younger age. You need fresher ideas. You need people that can galvanize the whole, not part. That's the other problem here, in some fashion. So things have got to change all the way through. And it's just mind-boggling to think that we are at this point in time. Now, obviously, the Democrats have gone younger this time. They've gone with a different flavor. Let's see how it works out.
Only by necessity. It wasn't designed by that.
By
it was necessity.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. You can just let things automatically work themselves out, or things happen for a reason, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, it's a neck and neck race, and we, we're in that situation we are in now. And frankly, even just, kind of closing on the note that we've had even just a rough week. Stock market wasn't exactly happy yesterday.
Oh my God, taking a real hit.
We're not in exactly the best economic times, best anything times. So let's see if we can make things spin for the better as a whole.
Well, we just need to come together. I don't care who wins. I just hope that the agenda is about the American people.
Yes.
And that's a plural. It's not
and that's
a group
and that's
or
the whole
a segment.
And I mean, and again, not to go on a political slant, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Let's think about the American people. Let's think about this country. Let's think about how to make ourselves something that other countries want to be, as opposed to us catering to the needs of all. And I get what we're doing, but at the same time, we're not looking out for ourselves because we're a bad model right now.
You know what? You know how when you're getting ready to have company over, and before company comes over, especially with my wife and everyone else, you always want to have your best representation, right? You clean your house. So when people see your house and they're like, yes, it's a nice house. Why are we doing that in the way we handle our business? We're going to go and
That's
try
the
to help and spend billions here and spend billions there. And then we look in our backyard and we got like 2 broken down ass cars and a bunch of garbage and nothing's
We look
clean.
like hoarders.
What's that?
We look like we got closets of a hoarder.
That's what I mean. Why are we not focusing on the things? I'd rather see our money invested in ourselves to make us better. And there's a lot of things that need to change. And which side of the fence you're on, it doesn't matter. There's some things that are just right. And I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, if you're a liberal or conservative, right is right. And we should be looking at that. And I feel like we're just too busy doing other things. And it just really, it's shameful because you said something that I don't feel is the way the world looks at it. Because I, through my wife, I have people who I talk to who laugh at America. This used to be the place that people wanted to come. Everybody looked up to America. Man, they got their act together over there. That's not the way people see us, and haven't since Obama.
Yep.
So what is that telling you? They haven't seen us that way since Obama. They laugh. I get questions about how do you feel as American watching these people running the show?
Yep.
Really? Well, the last 2 people who were running the show are the 2 people that we had, but before he bowed out, to be nominated again. And this has been the worst period. So what is that telling you? What is that telling you about the party?
Why are we letting bad history repeat itself? That's the question, right?
So
it's like deciding to play the same record twice, even though you hate it. Like, how does that work?
Right. We keep playing the same damn record. And it's like, you know what? This record sucks. But we didn't go buy any new records. We just kept the same one.
Yep.
What the fuck?
Truth. On that note, maybe we'll pick back up with a little bit more sports and kind of pick up on some of the politics that are kind of developing as we go here. But I think we'll also have a good chat on the Olympics, I think, by next week when I'm back. But kind of
you're out of here? You're out of here as of tomorrow?
Yep. So we're traveling out tomorrow through Tuesday. Yep.
Okay. So we'll pick this back up next week. We'll do a summary around what has happened and transpired in the Olympics, what's happened in the political world, what's happened in the NFL world, and anything else that's relevant that we feel we want to bring to the public's attention.
Absolutely.
Well,
on that note, hopefully you guys found this informative. Hopefully we covered a lot of ground, obviously, and kind of tied different stories all back together, that near and far, to say the least.
But it's all about bringing some insight, perspective to everyone that's listening and that joins in to be part of what we're producing. And we hope that you all have a wonderful day, that you look to find peace in your lives, and that you look to question the things that go on so that you can find reasonable outcomes that help you, and not just falling in line like sheep, going with what others are saying, works for them, but maybe not for you.
Yep. Find the facts, decide for yourself. Simple as that.
That's it. You got a big old world of the internet out there. You could actually look things up and try to find information, and not just take what your next door neighbor's telling you as gospel.
Yeah, and worst case, go to this thing called a library. They still exist. They have these things called paper. You can rub it, touch it, read it. That shit exists.
Oh, that's great, man. And on that note, that is awesome. And please go see some of our other discussions and podcasts. More being posted. We're also going to be able to bring you a little snippets, maybe by subject, as well as some of our longer podcasts, so that we can give you something for your cup of coffee, as well as something for you to digest if maybe you're taking a dump on the toilet.
Yep, yes, sir. On that, thank you, Mr. Brown.
And thank you, Mr. Brown. And
be
well. Safe travels too, man. Enjoy yourself.
Likewise.
All right.
Catch you later.
All right. Bye-bye.